Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday,
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. Internal feuds are set to dominate the Conservative Party conference, which kicks off today.
And Rishi Sunak is apparently going to leave early on day one to avoid the limelight of the leadership contest.
Well, that's as Kemi Badenoch, Robert Jenrick, James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat will use the next days to try to win over members.
Ashamed of her party, Rosie Duffield quits Labour with a stinging rebuke of Keir Starmer, accusing the Prime Minister of hypocrisy.
Israel braces for revenge following the killing of the Hezbollah leader yesterday. Benjamin Netanyahu hails it as a historic turning point.
The secrets of the Queen's final days, revealed by Boris Johnson, including some crucial advice she gave him.
War raging in Ukraine and heightened tensions in the Middle East. As world leaders jet away from the United Nations, we're debating whether it's actually fit for purpose.
Good morning. There was history made at Stamford Bridge as Chelsea's Cole Palmer became the first player to score 4 goals in the first half of a game. There were Premier League wins too for Arsenal and Liverpool. And in cricket, England are on the verge of completing a stunning ODI turnaround against Australia.
It's going to be an unsettled day in the west with outbreaks of heavy rain and stronger winds, but drier in the east. I'll have all of the latest coming up shortly.
It's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast. The Boris Johnson memoirs are still making interesting reading today in the Mail on Sunday. His new memoir, Unleashed, is being serialised by the Mail. And one of the things I found very interesting, because I didn't know, and I don't know whether many people knew. You unhappy about me saying this?
No, because it's out there now.
Yeah,
but...
is that Boris says that when he went to meet the Queen, obviously, but when he resigned, he said we'd known for a year that she was dying of a form of bone cancer. Now, I didn't know that.
No.
Did you? I've never read that anywhere.
No.
Never heard it from anyone.
I wonder if he's overstepped the line, actually.
Well, you wonder whether saying anything that she said to him is sort of overstepping the line. But he obviously feels he could say something.
I'm a bit uncomfortable with it. I mean, I know it's a bit odd, because if it was anybody else, you'd just say, well, this is what was up with them, and this. But it was the Queen. And she clearly didn't want it out there, otherwise she would have released the information like Charles did and like the Princess of Wales did. So I'm a bit I just feel a bit uncomfortable about it.
Yes,
I don't know why.
Agree. Yeah. He even goes as far as to say something that the Queen said to him about Macron, President Macron, and the fact that there was a big age gap between himself and his wife. Yeah. Shall I say what he said?
Go on.
He said, she said. He'd been explaining to the Queen that he was very frustrated that President Macron didn't seem to understand that Northern Ireland was part of the United Kingdom because they were talking about Brexit and all the complexities of trade deals and things. And the Queen said, yes, President Macron, you know, there is a big age gap between himself and his wife. Boris Johnson said, well, that's because basically he married his teacher. And she said, well, she didn't teach him very much about history, did she? Which is a very, very Queen thing, isn't it?
Yes.
You can imagine her saying
But
that.
if you've got a reputation for having an uncomfortable relationship with the truth, as has often been said about Boris Johnson, you're probably going to ham up your autobiography a little bit, aren't you?
Yes, of
Especially
course.
if you're serialised and you've got a book to sell.
Well, I think everybody hams up all
Yes.
biographies, to be fair.
Yeah.
But
do you think he was really planning on invading Holland?
Well, I think he probably joked about it or even said, couldn't we do something like... Or, you know, but planning an invasion is putting it a bit strong, isn't it?
Yeah. Here's one for you.
Yeah.
How do you get on a bus? Do you know how to get on a bus?
Well, you...
Step on the bus.
Yeah, well, yes, that's what I say. You're at a bus stop, usually, and you step on the bus and you go up the steps.
Yeah.
You say hi to the driver.
Ah, well, yes. This is absolutely right. However, Arriva have included instructions and a little display of how to correctly board a bus.
Oh.
If that's not telling you how to suck eggs. The problem with that message is it can only be displayed inside the bus, so you can only see it once you're on.
Well, that's daft. I mean, why can't it be stuck on the side of the bus by the door?
Well, I mean, why do you need it at all? But it's a bit like packets of peanuts saying this may contain nuts on it, isn't it? But that's what Arriva are doing on their
So they're telling
buses.
people how to board a bus
Once they're already
on it.
There are loads of these handy hints on the underground these days, aren't there?
Oh, are there?
Yeah, loads of drink water in hot weather.
Yes.
Have a bottle of water with it. All this, keep left when there's a barrier in the way, and there's an arrow there as well. It's obvious which way to go.
Don't forget to breathe.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I often forget that.
It's deeply patronising, isn't it? Although clearly they've. Well, it's probably a department in charge of
I would have
doing
thought
the
so.
correct thing.
Well, people paid a fortune for
Yes, yeah, I'm sure they are. They probably put it out to consultation as well before they did it, and that will have cost a fortune too.
Frightening, isn't it?
Are you looking forward to the Tory party conference today?
No. No, got to be honest, which is probably not the right thing to say because we're doing a lot of talking about it today.
I mean, it could be interesting if the feathers fly. Or
does
whatever.
anybody care that much, in a way? I don't know. It just seems to be a spent force at the moment, and maybe it'll come back in the future. But at the moment,
missing a huge opportunity, aren't they? Given what's happening with the government.
Yes, they are.
Huge opportunity.
Well, yeah, but would anyone listen to them at this stage anyway? I just don't know that they would. I just think they've...
And there are reports that still more and more Tory voters are looking at reform very seriously and signing up.
Well, because at least...
So they could hemorrhage all of their support before they've even got a new leader if they're not careful.
They could do, because at least reform is looking... I mean, for effectively a start-up party, it's now looking much more efficient and together...
Streamlined.
Than the Tories are at the moment. But, of course, it can all change very quickly.
Everything.
However... internal feuding is a problem for the Conservative Party. It should be stopped. according to Rishi Sunak, who today will talk to the Conservative Party conference in Birmingham.
Though his appearance is expected to be brief, because apparently he's going to return to London tonight as the conference becomes an audition, basically, for the 4 prospective leadership candidates.
Well, it was at this event in 2005 when the rookie David Cameron turned his fortunes around and became leader.
And so you could say it's all to play for, with only 121 Conservative MPs deciding the fate of those candidates.
Until it goes to the membership, of course. But all of this happening whilst internal rows, of course, are continuing in the Labour Party.
Oh, yes, because yesterday Rosie Duffield MP dramatically quit the party over the Cabinet's freebies and the winter fuel row.
What a mess it all is. I thought things were meant to be getting better. Let's head to Birmingham and our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Let's start with the Tories, then, should we, Catherine? I mean, they've got it all to play for, in a sense, but is there that much enthusiasm for this?
Well, round the country, who knows? Let's face it, they were booted out of office. A lot of people, I think we've ended up with a big Labour majority, more because people were sick of the Tories than any love for Labour. But it is important that we have a functioning and strong opposition. The Conservatives are best placed to provide that. So we are here in Birmingham now. Worth saying, the last time Conservative conference was held in Birmingham, it was Liz Truss that was Prime Minister. And during the conference here, I remember vividly how her premiership began to implode. She is going to be popping up here at some point. She still wants to have her say. That's one previous Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, the current acting Conservative leader, former Prime Minister, of course, arrived last night. He will be here today, but then he will be off because basically it's about the future, isn't it? He doesn't want to overshadow this. Boris Johnson, another former Prime Minister, will not be here. Of course, he's got his explosive book coming out. He's spent a lot of the year abroad, but it's all about the 4 pretenders vying for the Tory crown, the favourites, Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch. And then the other 2, James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat. Now, Robert Jenrick's people are very confident they're going to make the final 2. Kemi Badenoch believes if she can get to the final 2, she will win with the members, but they are concerned that there'll be some sort of dirty tricks going on behind the scenes to prevent her getting that far. So it will be fascinating to see. They will be here, they will be mingling, trying to win over Conservative MPs and, crucially, members. There'll be Q&A sessions. They'll each get to make 20-minute speeches. But fundamentally, they've got to get MPs on side. There will be rounds of voting in another week or 2. MPs will whittle it down to the final 2. Then there'll be another couple of weeks, and the members, the Conservative members, will get to make the final say. We will know who the new leader is, not for over a month. It'll be on November the 2nd.
OK, Catherine, we're going to leave it there for now, but thanks very much indeed. All 4 leadership candidates will be talking to our Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood, live on GB News from 9:30 this morning.
Now, David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, has spoken to the Lebanese Prime Minister following a series of Israeli airstrikes on Beirut.
In a post on X, the Foreign Secretary said they'd agreed on the need for an immediate ceasefire to bring an end to the bloodshed.
And this comes after the terrorist group Hezbollah confirmed that their leader has indeed been killed in those airstrikes on southern Lebanon.
Let's talk to international security analyst Will Geddes. I mean, with this confirmation, Will, where does this leave the situation?
Well, right now, at the moment, Hezbollah have been pretty much disabled. I mean, taking out Hassan Nasrallah, who is the leader and very much the symbolic leader of Hezbollah since the early 90s. His removal in the wake of, obviously, that very effective pager and radios attack across Hezbollah, has pretty much disabled them. But what's been really interesting is there's been some strong rhetoric coming out of Iran, and particularly from the Khomeini, that they will seek retribution. But at the same time, other members of Khomeini's government are saying that Hezbollah are very more than capable of dealing with matters on their own and are pretty much on their own. So they're taking a bit of a retractive position. So we've seen a retribution attack by the Houthis down in the Yemen against Israel. But right now, Israel really has the stronger hand. And I think ultimately what we're going to see is Hezbollah trying to withdraw itself from having entered into this conflict.
And what of Iran? Have they said anything? And even what of America? All the time everybody's wondering who is going to be pulled in. But do you think at the moment we're seeing a fall back?
Well, we're seeing a fallback by Hezbollah. The Houthis, they're going to continue to try and support. But what we're seeing really interestingly is Israel has been surrounded, obviously, not only by Hamas in Palestine, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, but we're seeing that, in fact, possibly the whole beginning of this conflict on October the 7th was drawing Iran, Hezbollah and the Houthis into the situation against Israel unnecessarily. Now, that's not to say that they weren't very much perceived enemies of Israel, but Hamas was not necessarily doing this on the instruction of Iran. And Iran is taking a very, very sort of cautious position right now. And although making sort of fairly bold statements, they know that if they engage themselves very directly against Israel in some kind of retribution to what's happened to Hezbollah, I think they know that they're going to bring on pretty much the sympathies of the West against them. And Iran at the moment is trying to, in some degrees, create the sort of Obama-era sort of area of discussions and negotiations, rather than necessarily draw the wrath of America against them.
As we said at the beginning, our Foreign Secretary has spoken to the Lebanese Prime Minister. I wonder what the purpose of that is. I mean, he says he has no affiliation with Hezbollah. Hezbollah, though, is heavily involved in politics in Lebanon. So, I mean, what sort of figure is he? Is he a puppet figure? Does he have any power?
I don't think he does have any power, to be absolutely honest, Steve. I think he's trying to arbitrate. He's trying to mediate, obviously, between the various different groups. Certainly, I know a lot of Lebanese people, and although the attack, obviously, against Nasrallah was right up in the south areas of Beirut in the north of the country, and Hezbollah are generally in the south of the country, a vast majority of the Lebanese are not supporters of Hezbollah. And Hezbollah has pretty much been decimated right now. And we mustn't forget that Hezbollah is not an inert terrorist group. They've sent many thousands of missiles into Israel. So, they have been incredibly aggressive. But what we haven't seen really is a joined-up approach. And although Israel is surrounded by enemies, we haven't seen them working effectively in coordination, just really more in pockets independently.
OK, well, we'll leave it there. Will Geddes, thank you very much for joining us so early in the morning. Thank you.
It's 15 minutes past 6. Let's have a look at some of the other stories heading into the newsroom this morning.
Well, the clean-up begins after Hurricane Helene swept through the southeast of the United States, leaving at least 64 people dead and millions without power. Helene was one of the most powerful storms ever to hit the United States.
The wild weather also devastated Nepal. More than 100 dead there, 64 missing. Flooding and landslides hit Kathmandu. It's the highest recorded rainfall since 1970. All divisions of their security forces have been ordered to help.
The King and Queen have visited Holyrood to mark the 25th anniversary of the Scottish Parliament being reconvened. The celebration showcased Scottish music and culture and was attended by local heroes who have been nominated thanks to their contribution to local communities. His Majesty spoke of the success of the devolved Parliament. And there's a man who can wear a kilt.
Oh.
He looks good in a kilt.
Yeah, I suppose he does, really.
He's just used to it, I suppose.
Yes.
Got the right
do you know anyone who's worn a kilt?
No.
I wouldn't mind wearing it. I quite fancy. I think it looks quite good.
It can look really, really good.
But I've never done it.
Oh.
So,
well,
there you
that's
go.
on your bucket list.
It's on the bucket list. Buy a kilt.
Like to see it, wouldn't you?
Costs a lot of money, though, I can imagine. A decent
I think
kilt.
they do because they're made of this incredibly heavy fabric.
Just
and there
as
are
well.
many layers. Yeah, I mean, that's because it has to weigh.
You don't want it to fly away.
No, you really don't.
Not doing a Marilyn Monroe. Right, let's have a check on the weather for you. Here's Catherine.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be wet and windy in the west today with outbreaks of heavy rain and strong winds, but generally drier in the east with some hazy sunshine. But it's a chilly start to the day, especially where we've seen some clear skies, but bright skies to start, especially across Scotland and across eastern parts of England. But further towards the west, we have an area of low pressure that's bringing in some strong gusty winds, and the Met Office have got a yellow wind warning in force for Wales and the southwest of England. So expect gusts of 50 to 60 miles per hour. Mild here though, but probably unpleasant. Feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine further east you go. So through Sunday evening then, we've got heavy spells of rain and a rain warning that will also come into force later. So heavy spells of rain, especially over the highest ground of Devon, Cornwall and also Wales. Turning cloudier across Northern Ireland with further spells of rain here, but generally dry across parts of Scotland with some clear skies to go into Sunday evening. But for many of us, it's going to be turning increasingly unsettled with outbreaks of rain continuing to push their way north and eastwards, coming into much of Wales, into the Midlands and then in towards the southeast of England. So like I said, we do have a Met Office rain warning in force, so expect further flooding and some difficult driving conditions as well. But that will lead to a mild night with many places seeing largely cloudy skies. And we also still hold on to some strong winds, especially towards the south and west as we start Monday morning. But Monday looks generally unsettled for a lot of us with outbreaks of rain and a lot of cloud around. So unsettled across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland as well, and then heavy spells of rain wrapping around this low pressure system, drier as we go later on in the southwest.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Do stay with us. Still to come, the Lancaster bomber statue is nearly complete. GB News' East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has more in a couple of moments.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching GB News Breakfast with him and me. Now, an Avro Lancaster bomber in Lincolnshire has reached another remarkable milestone.
Yeah, the Bomber County Gateway Trust have built a full-size version of the aircraft, which will be taller than the Angel of the North.
With GB News viewers, thank you very much, donating more than £30,000 towards the project, it's not even close to completion.
Well, our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has the story.
The plane that won the war. Once thousands of Lancaster bombers filled the skies above Lincolnshire. Now there is only one left. Dick Denby was a boy during the war.
In the 1940s, towards the end of the war, the sky over Lincoln was always full of aeroplanes.
On an industrial estate near Lincoln, the Bomber County Gateway Trust is building a full-scale Lancaster landmark. The structure honouring the heritage of the aircraft and the men who served as crew will be put in place on the border with Nottinghamshire. Ken Sadler is chairman of the charity.
Today is the first opportunity that we've had to assemble the entire structural frame in one piece so that people get to see the scale and the size of what we've actually achieved. We've got to move on from this now to put ribs on this, to flesh it out, to give it the final shape.
Reaching this stage is a huge milestone for the team building the Lancaster, but it's not finished yet. They need more time and, more importantly, money.
We need to raise another £50,000 to buy the steel for cladding it. That's our next big milestone. As soon as we can get that, we can flesh it out and we can start planning a completion date.
They'll get to know all about Lancasters in Nazi Germany and the rest of the occupied continent.
In the 1940s, thousands of Lancaster bombers were stationed along England's eastern counties, mostly in Lincolnshire, the home of Bomber Command. Now a new generation is learning about Britain and the war.
So it'll all be clad in Corten steel and...
Dave Starling's firm, Timmins Engineering, is building the structure.
The ultimate sacrifice was paid by thousands of people, and this is the least that we could do for them, really.
When complete, the Lancaster, named On Freedom's Wings, will be taller than the Angel of the North. It's already loved by locals.
A project like this is just such a fantastic thing that should be remembered. Can't wait to see it finished and mounted.
Everything flew from here, didn't it?
And we lost so many people, so many men.
Yes, we did.
It means they're not forgotten.
I should be hopefully allowed to see it. But you never know, do you?
The charity hopes to finish the project by September next year. A reminder of Britain's darkest days and greatest triumph. Will Hollis, GB News in Lincolnshire.
Will be wonderful to see it completed.
I do hope that lady does live to see it. I'm
Let's
sure it
hope
won't take
so.
that long, but if they needed another 50 grand, it may take a bit of time raising it, raising that money.
It's a lot of money, isn't it?
It is, but it will be fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
And the idea that it's even going to be bigger and taller than the Angel of the North.
Which is, in itself, wonderful to see.
Staggering, isn't it, when you drive past it?
It's good, fantastic. Right, as you know, the weather's turning now, the nights are drawing in, but you still have plenty of time to grab that autumn cash boost of an incredible £36,000 in cash.
It's the biggest cash prize of the year, and it could be yours. Here's all the details you need.
There's still on demand. Good luck.
Martin Daubney. Weekdays from 3 p.m.
Well, the first thing on my mind when I heard about this is, what has this country come to when we're talking about getting kids as young as 6 years old to be jabbed weekly or however often it is, because they are too fat? Where are the parents in all of this? There's three things actually here that are important. Number one is we do not know the long-term consequences of these jabs. So if I had a child and I was going to let them have the jab, I would be feeling like I'm treating them like a lab rat, to be quite honest with you, because we don't know the long-term consequences. Secondly, the manufacturers are clear that some of the potential side effects can be very serious. We're talking about potentially pancreatitis, let's get my word out, and also it lists as a potential side effect thyroid cancer. Arguably, it's called the gamble jab, to be honest with you, because of these potential side effects at the moment. And then thirdly, I come back to the parents. Where are the parents in all of this? Because they are the role models. So it really is about parenting, and it's about parenting from being a role model yourself in terms of being slim and healthy, and not expecting a jab to take your place and other people to take your place. If you have children, they are your responsibility. Think before you breed. The other thing you need to remember with this is, when you stop taking that jab, it is highly likely that you're going to put all the weight back on. Now, the thought of a child of 6 years of age, starting with that jab, conditioning them mentally to live with that jab, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely not on.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, time for the sport with Aidan. Let's talk Cole Palmer, because the lad's a little miracle worker.
Well, he is a bit. I mean, he'll be known to both of you as the guy who scored England's goal in the Euros final against Spain. And it beggars belief to me that he was benched throughout the tournament, having scored 22 goals last season for Chelsea. He didn't get a start for England. Gareth Southgate, this is one of the criticisms of Southgate, he didn't alter his side even though someone came in late on and was particularly outstanding. And he just showed his prowess yesterday, and 4 goals in the first half against Brighton and Hove Albion. It was 4-2 just at half-time, so 6 goals in total.
He himself scored 4 goals in the first half. It's the
first time in Premier League history that a player has scored 4 goals in the first half. I remember Ole Gunnar Solskjaer back in 1999 coming off the bench for Manchester United in the second half and scoring 4 goals at Nottingham Forest in an 8-1 victory. But this is different because this was match winning.
Oh, that must have been wonderful to watch.
It was. And I should say as well, he hit the post before. Yeah. And he had a goal disallowed before he scored his first goal.
Oh, wow. So basically he had 6.
Yeah, and he missed a brilliant chance in the second half as well. But he looks absolutely outstanding. And
the crowd must have gone completely wild.
Well, now Chelsea are in a decent position now. They were ridiculed over the summer for spending all this money, and they spent well over £1 billion in transfer fees, and it seems to be a throw mud at the wall and hope some of it will stick transfer policy. There was internal infighting as well on the board. But Chelsea have crept into the top 4 now, and we're only, a month and a half into the season. and they look like they're going to have quite a good campaign. But yeah, Cole Palmer.
If only he'd done that in the Euros.
Well, no, but he didn't. This is the point. He didn't really get the chance because Southgate just kept bringing him on later on. He didn't get on in every game, and I felt he made a difference. I mean, it was an excellent goal, as you remember, in the final against Spain, and he's used to being cast aside as well. He didn't make it at Manchester City.
There must be a reason for that, wasn't there?
Yeah, probably. I mean, look, it's all about opinions.
Attitudes.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Football is more database than it's ever been before. You can look at players' touches and their pass completion, all kind of metrics to ascertain whether a player is good or not, or is effective. But there's no accounting for improvement, is there?
No.
But I think he was an exceptionally talented player anyway. I mean, I'm not saying I knew more than Gareth Southgate. Well, even though it sounds as though I am saying that.
He worked out. He gets his 4 goals. As you said, he'd even had a previous couple of tries. When did the other side get their 2 goals?
So Brighton took the lead, actually. Brighton took the lead. Cole Palmer scores 3, having hit the post and had a goal disallowed. Brighton then get it back immediately to 3-2, and then Cole Palmer scores again. Then it all went quiet in the second half.
Right.
So, I think
talk about going quiet. Well, our lights have gone off.
Oh, goodness me.
Sorry about that.
Don't worry.
Oh, they're back again.
But look, the lights certainly haven't gone out on Liverpool's title hopes. They're at top of the table. Arsenal winning again as well, 4-2, and Manchester City dropping points up at Newcastle.
What about what's on today?
On today, well, we've got Manchester United against Tottenham, so the ongoing saga with Eric Ten Hag. I think if he loses today against Tottenham at Old Trafford at 4:30, I think he's in serious trouble. I really do. But then
been saying that for months.
We have. He keeps clinging on. He just seems to be a survivor, doesn't he? And so look, that's a big game today, as I say. Ipswich take on Aston Villa, and a bit of an injury worry for Harry Kane as well over in Germany. He got injured against Bayer Leverkusen, which was a Bundesliga clash involving 2 of the top 4, and that's difficult for him because although Vincent Kompany said the manager, the former Burnley and Manchester City player, said that doesn't look like it's serious, but they're going to Aston Villa on Wednesday in the Champions League, and it could have repercussions for England. So it's a good job Cole Palmer is in form, because it might be needed.
Harry will just have to rest with a bowl of porridge, which is his new. I don't know if you've heard about it.
No.
He's doing adverts
for porridge.
For porridge in Germany. So it's not a brand you can get over here, but it's the most awful advert.
Oh.
It's just, why do these people do these? I mean, it's cringe.
Did you like the Declan Rice one a few years ago with the yoghurt, Rice Baby?
Oh, I
Muller Rice.
I know, yeah.
But you'd think they earn enough money just playing their football, wouldn't you?
I know, you would, but
they can't do it. They just can't.
But we won't mention the brand, but you do share the same footwear label as Harry Kane, don't you?
Oh, do I?
Yeah. Begins with S.
Oh, Jamie, I didn't know he did that.
Yeah, they make football boots just for him.
I just know.
Just for him. But no, he's going well, but it's just disappointing that he's beginning to get to age now. He's picking up niggling injuries, but we're hoping to see him back in Birmingham on Wednesday. So it looks like he's going to be overshadowed by the Tory Party conference.
They share the same footwear. I mean, I have to buy mine, Aidan. That's the difference. Let's have a look at the cricket.
Yeah, look, big day today for England. I mean, they were 2-0 down against Australia. They got it back to 2-2 on Friday. Absolutely outstanding performance, 186-run victory. Harry Brook, who's aged 25, standing captain at the moment. He's the future of English cricket in all forms, I would say. He's producing numbers that are equivalent to Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi in football. But 87 from 58 balls. Ben Duckett got 50. Liam Livingstone, 62 from 27. Now, it all goes down to Bristol today. And if they can turn that round... And it hasn't been a vintage summer of cricket for England, largely because, I mean, not just at one-day level, but in all forms of the game. They haven't really played any significant opposition, not like the previous summer when they played Australia. But this is the one-days, and if they can notch up a victory against Australia, it's easier said than done because they're a class side. But if they can get to this evening, and it starts at 11 o'clock this morning, but if they can get to this evening and say we overturned a 2-0 defeat again, or 2-0 loss against, we were trailing 2-0 against Australia, turned it back to win 3-2, and that's an outstanding achievement. So we'll have to.
They're still doing all the Bazball style stuff.
Well, it works. It works better.
Has that died off a bit?
No, it hasn't, because he's in charge. He's going to be in charge of all forms of cricket now for England. So you're going to see him in one days. You're going to see him in the longer forms of the game, and it's exciting, and it works at one-day level because you've got to try and win as quickly as possible because it's got to be done in one day. So you've got to take risks. So as soon as we're seeing his influence on this team already, there's no doubt about that. And so, as I say, it'd be a really, really noteworthy achievement if they can pull that off.
Yeah.
And can I mention Yannick Sinner?
We've got time.
Tennis, that's an interesting one, isn't it?
I think it's really interesting because this is Yannick Sinner, the world #1 Italian tennis player, who was he tested positive for 2 banned substances back in March at Indian Wells. Quite a big tournament, that. And so he goes into the US Open just a month ago, and we see the picture of him there. we see him going into the US Open a month ago. He beat Jack Draper of Britain in the semi-final. He went on to win it. He is the world #1. And just on the eve of the US Open, he's cleared. And
he's been cleared.
He was cleared. Yes, he was. And that was cleared by an independent tribunal. And so WADA have since gone back. And
now, WADA are the World Anti-Doping Agency.
Correct, yes. And so while Sinner was in action yesterday at the China Open, he was told, or he was actually told a couple of days before, but it was announced while he was in action yesterday in China that WADA would be launching an appeal to the Court of Arbitration of Sport to recommend that he is banned for between 1 and 2 years. That's a seismic story in the world of tennis.
So is that casting doubt on his US Open title?
I think, well, let's see if it's upheld. But if it is, and I would say you'd have to conclude that, wouldn't you? Surely. I mean,
well, you would. If you were one of the players he defeated, yes.
Yeah, without doubt, it would leave Jack Draper and many others on the way. He did
sort of rise very quickly, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean...
Don't look at me like that. You know what I mean.
No, I wasn't.
Oh.
I was... I'm Diamond, I'm surprised at you.
Well, it was
I'm not surprised.
I thought you were implying that showed you...
Well, just observing.
Yes, look, I observed it as well. It was all about Alcaraz this time last year.
In fact, we were expecting him to sort of be the #1. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so, look, let's see what happened. He may well be. There's every chance he may be found not guilty, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's a difficult situation for him because as soon as anyone tests positive for drugs, and especially if it's upheld, then you can't
positive and then be cleared. I mean, either the test is correct or it's not.
Well, there's just different standards applied. I think that's what it comes down to.
Well, it was blamed on his masseur having some steroids on his hands because they'd had a treatment for something.
To be fair,
got into his system.
It is amazing the excuses you hear, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Sorry, is that a bit of a loaded comment as well? But you know what I mean. You do hear some extraordinary...
Yes, you do.
It's not Andy Murray.
I know.
King of tennis.
I just can't get over it. No, actually, I mean, I was looking for Alcaraz to win everything, and then...
But it's a shame. It'd be a huge shame for the sport, though. It would. Because this is the world #1.
You don't often hear of it in tennis, do you?
Not really, no.
Right, Aidan, thank you. We shall see you a little bit later on. We've got the papers in just a minute. Lynn May and Tom Slater will be here, so don't go anywhere.
The king of breakfast TV is back. That's right, Britain's favourite TV host, Eamon Holmes, returns to Britain's hottest breakfast programme. Breakfast every day from 6 a.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
SpaceX has completed its first private spacewalk. What do you mean you don't know what I'm talking about? Billionaire Jared Isaacman became the first non-professional astronaut to walk in space this morning. It was live on Britain's Newsroom. I didn't know what I was watching. Here's his reaction.
There's SpaceX. Back at home, we all have a lot of work to do, but from here, Earth sure looks like a perfect world.
So that was him coming out of his little capsule. He was attached to the capsule by what they call the umbilical, by a cord, and that was obviously the Earth in the background. It does raise the question, though, Tom, doesn't it? Can you justify the expense? We don't know the true figure that cost to get that spacecraft into air and to have this billionaire up there. We don't know, but let's just say it's in the hundreds of millions at least. How do you justify it when we can't get clean water to half the planet?
Just, Bev, to demonstrate that I'm not engaged here in the politics of envy. I mean, this is a private company, SpaceX. Elon Musk is a private individual. He's attracted these fees, if you like, to go up into space. So, absolutely, this is a plutocrat on a joyride in space that's been over the news. I think there's a broader issue here about... Instead of joyrides in space, actually, we should be solving, as you say, the water challenges, the educational challenges, the malarial challenges in part of this world, and indeed the challenges in our own country with a quadrupling of the number of people that are visiting food banks just in the last 10 years or so. So there are plenty of social problems. If entrepreneurs and billionaires have got money to give away, to throw away, they should be putting them into solving those very human problems on this planet.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
6:42 morning to you. Let's have a look at the newspapers. And the Sunday Telegraph leads with Rosie Duffield resigning from the Labour Party following the backlash over her criticism of Sir Keir Starmer.
The Times leads with Israel conducting significant military strikes against Hezbollah.
The Observer has Iran vowing retaliation against Israel after the assassination of the Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah.
The Sunday Mirror reports that the families of the Nottingham attack victims claim a BBC programme about Valdo Calacane exacerbated their trauma.
Sunday Express is looking at Kemi Badenoch vowing to dismantle human rights laws to curb migrant boats.
Yeah, I would have thought wouldn't you think any Tory leadership hopeful wouldn't say the words "stop the boats"? Because it sort of brought down the last leader, didn't it?
Yeah. Oh, dear. All right, let's see what's in the papers in a bit more detail with the editor of Spike, Tom Slater, and political commentator Lynn May. Good to see you both this morning. Let's have a look at the latest Labour scandal, Tom, in the Sunday Telegraph.
Yeah, so this is the news of you, as you already teed it up, that Rosie Duffield, who is a Labour MP, a backbencher for Canterbury, has quit the party, has resigned the whip in her letter, very trenchant case against the Prime Minister, accusing him of sleaze, of nepotism, a lot of things around the freebie scandal. People remember Rosie Duffield as a critic of the Labour leadership on questions of gender and trans rights and so on. This is very much about this particular scandal that they found themselves mired in recent weeks.
Yeah, is it going to have much of an impact? In that, partly because he's got such a huge majority and partly because she has become one of the irritants, hasn't she? She's just become one of those people that is always going to cause trouble.
Oh, it seems that way, and sorry, I'm completely losing my voice.
It depends as well on the effect it might have on other similarly aggrieved Labour MPs.
No, absolutely, and I think that's one thing where this particular letter lands is because of the fact that it's not going at Keir Starmer on the well-worn issues that we know Rosie Duffield was deeply concerned about. Here she's really touching on something which has upset the left of the party, which has upset a lot of people who back Starmer, which has given licence to a lot of people who felt like there wasn't much room to criticise him to probably do so. So I think it's more impactful almost because of the fact that this isn't about her and her differences with leadership on issues that she's talked about for a very long time. This is touching on something broader. Will it have a big impact on his governing ability? Of course not. It's one MP. Is there suddenly going to be a kind of massive cabinet resignations as a consequence of this? No, but it's another sign that the cracks are beginning to show a hell of a lot earlier than you would expect them to with a government.
Yeah, I really like Rosie Duffield. I think she represents what the traditional historical Labour voter was women's rights, how she's very vocal about like certain trans issues. And I think, I read her letter yesterday. I think it was a brilliant letter.
It's quite harsh.
It's really harsh, but not necessarily because I'm angry at, receiving a few gifts. What's wrong with receiving a few gifts? My issue is it's not in line with what Labour have preached about for ages. You had Angela Rayner tweet, Boris Johnson going out with his begging bowl. He should be able to pay for his own wallpaper on 150. Look now, she hasn't got much to say now. So my thing is the huge amount of hypocrisy, the way how they vilified the Conservatives for it, the way how they're like, we're for the working man. Let me pop my son in a nice penthouse so he can study. It's just really bad, poor taste, especially when you're willing to take away the winter fuel from people that are clearly going to struggle while you're receiving lovely luxury Harrods Selfridges suits.
And she makes that point in the letter, doesn't
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She talks about winter fuel payments and also the fact that Labour as yet haven't rescinded the 2-child benefit cap. And just there's a kind of sense of like, what is this Labour Party for, aside from all of these scandals and all the rest of it?
OK, Lynn, let's have a look at The Sun on Sunday and yet another story about Philip Schofield. And the show this Castaway show hasn't even started yet.
No, there's lots of conversation around this. Many people are absolutely disgusted to see him back on the screen. Others are like, hang on a minute, he didn't break the law. There wasn't a police investigation. He should be given maybe a second chance. A lot of people are also suggesting the criticism is heavily marred with, like, homophobia. If it was a younger lady, at the end of the day, when the relationship, or the affair, rather, took place, she was 20. However, he did meet the young gentleman when he was 15 years old. So some people are saying, you know, no, if it was... This is not a new thing. How often do we hear, like, oh, you know, he's old enough to be your dad, it's disgusting, when it's a woman. So I think people, whether you hate him, like him, disagree or agree, a lot of people are going to tune in because they want to see what he's got to say. He's got this sort of dishevelled look we've seen in the ads.
Well, you do, I think, if you're surviving on a desert island.
Is he really
on your
surviving,
own.
though? They say that he doesn't have a team. He's all doing it, like, do you remember that film, Castaway, with Tom Hanks? You know, all himself, and there's no crew there. But let's be honest. Of course, there'll be somebody there. Yeah. So I'm interested to see. Will you be watching it
all the time? I will watch it. I will. I'm almost ashamed to say yes. I'll watch it because I'll just want to know.
Do you think he should be welcomed back into prime time television?
That's a more difficult question to
But
answer.
that makes it seem like it's a gift that anyone can get. I mean, he's got to earn it, hasn't he, like anybody else?
Yeah.
But
what do you think?
I think he's... Oh, you're not asking me, are you?
Do you know, I think it was distasteful, given his position and what sort of television he did do. I think also there is a huge conversation. Times have changed, and we do look at grooming differently in terms of, like, you know, historically you may have been able to... If we look at Emmanuel Macron, he's married to who was his teacher, you know? However, now we have to be really careful, especially when you're in such high positions. And was that guy, to a degree, groomed? But it's a question that hasn't been investigated, and I think everyone deserves a second chance if nothing illegal happened. And if people are unhappy about that, then let's talk about the laws around that.
Well, I suppose you could say if people are unhappy about it, they don't have to watch him.
No, they don't. And I
But
suppose...
I bet they will.
And it's difficult when you're that kind of television personality, where it's very kind of wholesome, it's very kind of daytime television, morning television. I think it would just be difficult for audiences to get over it in their heads as much as anything.
I would have liked to have seen an investigation, if I'm honest with you. I think it was something that ITV knew about. We don't know the ins and outs, obviously, but I think it was very quickly shoved under the carpet. But there wasn't one, so we can't treat it like it was a criminal.
He claims he was thrown under the bus, isn't he?
Well, he lied a lot.
Yes.
And he did
lie a lot.
And if he felt that it was something OK to do, why didn't he just come out and say, do you know what? He did come out and say that he was gay. Loads of people really supported that, even though he did have an affair, was married, all of the rest of it.
Everybody's known it for 30 years.
Yeah. Honestly, it was the best-kept secret ever.
Really?
Yeah,
maybe in television, maybe behind the scenes, but I think there were a few shocks as well, you know, especially when... His wife must have known. Like, why were you there for so long? Even him being 62, you've wasted a lot of years. You could have found a nice husband.
He's pictured in the papers today, having gone out to lunch with her yesterday.
Wow, maybe she's really supportive.
And other friends. She seems to be the most supportive.
Maybe she was his beard. Do you know the term beard?
Oh, yes.
Yes,
no,
maybe.
They've got two children.
They've got two children who clearly adore him because they have been incredible.
Maybe he wanted children.
And he...
I don't know. It's all... I mean, I don't know how she does it.
No.
I don't know. No,
and think of his daughters too. But they have been incredible.
I think there's many more stories to come out like that, though.
Yeah.
That's what will make it good television, I'm afraid, watching Castaway, it will.
Tom,
I'll watch it and tell you.
Sunday Times, this is just because I just find this fascinating. Dodos could be brought back from extinction.
Yes, so there's an American bioscience company called Colossal Biosciences who reckon they've got a method to try and do this, essentially by kind of extracting some of the DNA from an old sample, and then through a complicated mechanism I only half understand, that they can essentially kind of use it to insert it into the DNA of a close relative. It turns out the dodos are relatives of pigeons, and then you get a chicken egg that you then kind of put this material into, and then you end up with something that's not quite a dodo, but as close to it as is humanly possible.
They did that in Jurassic Park, and it turned out to be a dismal mistake.
It is Jurassic Park,
isn't it?
It is.
As long as they do it on an island somewhere away from anywhere else.
Oh, yeah,
They can't fly, famously,
They
so
can't
that's all right.
fly, true.
And unless they end up 10 times as big as they were previously, I'm sure it won't be as much of a threat to human life.
It would be fascinating to see if they could do it. There is a dead dodo, stuffed dodo, in the Natural History Museum.
Yes, there
Maybe
is,
that's where
in
they'll
that
go.
one.
Yeah.
They've been doing things like this for years, though. Do you remember the goat spider? So that the spider could weave certain types of silk.
Oh,
and
yeah.
this was years ago. So I think they've probably been doing so many different experiments to resurrect certain species. Maybe we'll see woolly mammoths in the next 10 years.
The same company want to do woolly mammoths as well, apparently.
Really?
So if this comes off, you might end up with that.
There you go.
Isn't it weird that it's things like that's what you thought of as a kid? You thought, I want to see woolly mammoths and I want to see dodos.
Yeah.
I'd rather scientists spend their time figuring out how to avoid the rush hour or how to do something more productive.
To save the species that we're losing now. Maybe that would be a better thing to do.
I don't know, it's things like this. It's like space travel, where people say, oh, don't look at space travel, concentrate on the planet. But actually, it's the development of things like that that actually spawns all these other things. Things like ABS brakes on your car only exist because it was developed because of space travel.
Is that right?
Wow.
For the landings and things.
Oh, my goodness.
So it's stuff like that.
Do you remember when they took spiders up into the International Space Station and watched them spin webs? And, of course, we know how they spin webs on Earth. They were completely flummoxed. Their webs were just... they had no sense to them at all. The spiders were totally disorientated by being weightless.
Well,
absolutely.
Now, bookshelves. Then you've got a minute to talk about your fake bookshelves.
Quickly, I'd love to know people's thoughts on this. People who have bookshelves, are they using it as wallpaper to show off how intellectual they are or how, obsessed they are about certain fictions, I've got a bookshelf and I like people to come and have a look and think, oh, didn't think that she would read that. What about you?
Yes, I do the same. I've got very few books now because I got rid of so many because what I want to read tends to be on my computer. I download it. But yeah, the few bookshelves I have got, I've dressed them really for, I don't know.
It's a good talking point if you have guests over.
Have you got a dressy bookshelf?
I have bookshelves, not very well dressed though, to be fair. They're not even in any particular order.
Does it say anything about you?
I hope it probably does, but nothing that maybe I'd want to share. No, but it's one that I haven't really given too much thought to it.
Don't really read them, no. I just read a book and put it on there and now it's decoration.
Yeah. See, I'm just...
It's storage.
Disgraceful. Disgraceful. I haven't got a bookshelf, so I'm free and clear on this one. Right, thank you both. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
Here's the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be wet and windy in the west today with outbreaks of heavy rain and strong winds, but generally drier in the east with some hazy sunshine. But it's a chilly start to the day, especially where we've seen some clear skies but bright skies to start, especially across Scotland and across eastern parts of England. But further towards the west, we have an area of low pressure that's bringing in some strong gusty winds, and the Met Office have got a yellow wind warning in force for Wales and the southwest of England, so expect gusts of 50 to 60 miles per hour. Mild here though, but probably unpleasant, feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine further east you go. So through Sunday evening then, we've got heavy spells of rain and a rain warning that will also come into force later. So heavy spells of rain, especially over the highest ground of Devon, Cornwall and also Wales. Turning cloudier across Northern Ireland with further spells of rain here, but generally dry across parts of Scotland with some clear skies to go into Sunday evening. But for many of us, it's going to be turning increasingly unsettled with outbreaks of rain continuing to push their way north and eastwards, coming into much of Wales, into the Midlands and then in towards the southeast of England. So like I said, we do have a Met Office rain warning in force, so expect further flooding and some difficult driving conditions as well. But that will lead to a mild night with many places seeing largely cloudy skies. And we also still hold on to some strong winds, especially towards the south and west as we start Monday morning. But Monday looks generally unsettled for a lot of us with outbreaks of rain and a lot of cloud around. So unsettled across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland as well, and then heavy spells of rain wrapping around this low pressure system, drier as we go later on in the southwest.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Internal feud set to dominate the Conservative Party conference, which kicks off today.
And Rishi Sunak is going to apparently leave early on day one to avoid the limelight of the leadership contest.
That's as Kemi Badenoch, Robert Jenrick, James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat will use the next few days to try to win over members.
Meanwhile, she's ashamed of her party. Rosie Duffield quits Labour with a stinging rebuke of Keir Starmer, accusing the Prime Minister of hypocrisy.
Israel braces for revenge following the killing of the Hezbollah leader yesterday. Benjamin Netanyahu called it a historic turning point.
The secrets of the Queen's final days, revealed by Boris Johnson, including some crucial advice she had for him.
Well, with war in Ukraine and almost war in the Middle East, world leaders have now left the United Nations, but we're debating, is it really fit for purpose?
Good morning. World number one tennis star Yannick Sinner faces the renewed threat of a ban after the World Anti-Doping Agency appealed a ruling that cleared him of doping last month. We'll look ahead to Manchester United's clash with Tottenham at Old Trafford and reflect on a busy day of Premier League action. More later.
It's going to be an unsettled day in the west with outbreaks of heavy rain and stronger winds, but drier in the east. I'll have all of the latest coming up shortly.
It's just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Oh, and look at that. That's the skyline over London.
That is
this
a
morning.
pretty lovely shot, isn't it? That's
Beautiful.
the shot from the top of our Westminster studio. And that is a
Very nice.
fantastic sky behind an incredible skyline.
Yeah, so if you've got any beautiful pictures of the sunrise where you are this morning, we'd love to see them. I think the best way to do that is to email.
gbnews@gbviews.com.
Yeah,
I think it's the only way to get a picture to us now.
Unless you tweet it,
Yeah.
so we can pick it up. So at GB News on X. I think that's the best way to
Or
do
use
it.
the old
Beautiful,
way.
though.
It is. Does that mean we're going to get a good day's weather today?
Red sky at night, Shepherd's Delight. Red sky in the morning, Shepherd's Warning. No, it's going to rain.
Was that a red sky?
It's orange.
Well, it was a very orange sky, yeah.
I've got an outdoor.
Sensational.
I've got
Can
an
we have
outdoor
another look
tasting
at
menu
it?
today.
Have we still got it? Can we have another look? It's so lovely to see the recognisable skyline as well from there.
Beautiful.
As I say, it's from our Westminster studio, so
orange, isn't it?
that's the skyline you get. Well, it's going yellow now. Yeah.
I've got an outdoor tasting menu experience this afternoon, so I'm hoping for good weather.
Outdoors?
Yes.
You'll be lucky.
You reckon?
I think the rain is coming back today, isn't it?
Oh, is it?
7 courses in 5 hours, with a bit of jazz.
Outside?
7 courses in 5 hours?
I think so, yeah.
What sort of food?
You roll it,
Don't know,
probably.
Don't know. No,
Very nice.
There'll
Are
be some...
tasting menus worth it? Do you,
I
get,
did
do you
one-
get enough?
We did one for our wedding anniversary, and it was fantastic.
I agree.
So you do get enough to eat. It's not just tiny bits of
It was like 12 courses, I think we had. But you got 2 puddings. Two of them were puddings.
Also, the middle courses tend to be a little bit bulkier.
Yeah.
So to reflect it would be about the time of main course. So
You wouldn't want to do it for a normal meal, but for a special occasion.
Yeah. They are expensive, I imagine.
You're not proposing or anything, are you?
No, certainly not. I'm probably...
You'd be the first to know.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, nothing like that.
Talking of weather... have you
this
seen this amazing video? It's obviously on the internet all over the place now, but you're talking about the channel Fox News in America, and the weatherman, their weatherman, was covering the terrible flooding that's happened.
Yeah, Helene.
And if you look at him at the beginning of the video, he is talking, he's delivering the weather, and he's talking to the studio. And then realises that behind him there's a woman in serious trouble. She's in her car and she's trapped in the car, and the level of water coming up around her is so strong that she can't open the door to get out, and she's screaming. Have a look at this.
911, they're coming. You're good. You're good. Oh, man, it's a situation. We will get back to you in a little bit. I'm going to go see if I can help this lady out a little bit more, you guys. I'll be back.
And then there is Bob carrying her out. So for our viewers, Bob was doing a live shot for Fox and Friends. That's who he was talking to while he was hearing that lady scream in the background. He had already called EMS. He had already called 911. And then this is video of Bob pulling her out.
I mean, good on him.
Yeah.
It's great that he actually, put the microphone down and got on with rescuing someone.
Because I tell you what, actually, that would have been quite a dangerous thing to do.
Yeah.
'Cause you don't know what the undercurrents are or anything else, do you?
Now, apparently, he's 6'4", so he was able to... I suppose he knew that he could get out that far. And she couldn't open the door at all. So he said, wind the window down, and they allowed water in, which evened out the balance, and he was able to pull the door open and get her out, and then carried her out. But that is quite something, isn't it?
I tell you what, well, it is nice to see, quite right too, because I tell you what drives me mad when there are tragedies, incidents, the fact that rather than going and helping, people get their phones out, don't they? I mean, I understand why it happens. We use some footage sometimes. I mean, it's useful for us.
User-generated content, that's what we call it.
Yeah.
But it's always been a syndrome known for news cameramen, is that once they've got the earpiece to their eye, they're sort of distancing themselves from what's actually happening. And there are lots of cameramen who talk about how difficult it is to put the camera down and actually then go into the reality of it and help the situation. It's a sort of well-known syndrome. But, yeah, an awful lot of people get their cameras out now, don't they? When they actually should help.
It's a bit sad, isn't it?
But it's great that he did, and
him.
that ended well. It was, one of the deaths that didn't happen in the United States yesterday.
Good on Bob.
Yeah. It's Bob. Was it Bob?
Bob Vandella.
6'4", Bob, the hero.
No, good on him. Good on him. Right, our main news today, it's all about ending the internal feud. That's a message from former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak as he delivers a speech to Conservative Party conference, which starts in Birmingham today.
His appearance, though, is apparently going to be really brief at the conference today, because he's returning to London tonight. Because he said the conference is obviously going to become an audition for the 4 prospective leadership candidates.
Yeah, it was at the event in 2005, of course, when David Cameron, who was a rookie back then, turned his fortunes around and became leader. He was up against David Davis.
Gosh, yeah. It's all to play for, then, with only 121 Conservative MPs deciding the fate of the candidates.
All of this happening, though, whilst there is a pretty big internal row in the Labour Party.
Yeah, it's growing and growing, because yesterday Rosie Duffield quit the party over the Cabinet's freebies and the winter fuel row.
Let's head to Birmingham. Our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, is there. Catherine, let's start with Rosie Duffield, before we get into the horrors facing the Conservative Party. How damaging is this for Keir Starmer that he's got someone throwing in the towel after just a couple of months?
Well, it is damaging, certainly, because he's not even been Prime Minister for 3 months. And here we have Rosie Duffield last night saying that she's quitting Labour. She will sit as an independent MP for Canterbury with immediate effect. And that letter absolutely excoriating on Keir Starmer, on his policies and on the donations row. I'll just read you a couple of lines. She says, the sleaze, nepotism and apparent avarice are off the scale. She goes on to say, I am so ashamed of what you and your inner circle have done to tarnish and humiliate our once proud party. So there's 3 things here. She talks about his leadership. She says that he never fully engaged with backbench MPs and he lacks basic political instincts. She talks about the decision to keep the child benefit, 2-child benefit cap, and the decision to scrap the winter fuel payments, and she contrasts that with the fact that this ongoing row over donations. The Prime Minister has accepted more donations and freebies than any other recent MP, well over 100,000 now. We found out another 16,000 on clothes from Lord Ali that emerged just in the last day or two. She's clearly furious. I think it is worth saying that she and Keir Starmer have not had a happy history going back. She has stood up for women's rights. That's brought her into conflict with the trans community. And she feels that she wasn't given the support. In fact, there was an investigation into her a couple of years ago. She was totally cleared, but she felt that she had been sidelined and gaslit to some extent by the Labour leadership, but that is not the reason why she has resigned. And I do think it is very damaging. Just one final thought on the current government. A new poll for opinion puts Sir Keir Starmer's approval ratings at -30. That's the lowest ever. They actually got worse during Labour conference. You'd normally expect a bit of a bounce. The opposite has happened, and he is now less popular than the outgoing Conservative leader, Rishi Sunak.
And talking of Conservative leaders and the outgoing one, he's not hanging around long, is he? He's presumably going to make a speech. I wonder how that'll go down. And then disappear while the 4 leadership candidates then start their campaigns.
Yes, that's right. Rishi Sunak arrived last night. He's giving a welcome reception at 5 o'clock for Conservative Party members to say thank you, fundamentally. And then he's off to leave the stage clear for the 4 people, one of whom, come November the 2nd, it's still a long way off yet, is going to become Conservative leader. Now, Boris Johnson is not here. Liz Truss will be coming along. It's here 2 years ago that her premiership started to implode, but she wants to come and have her say. But the focus will be pretty much entirely on Robert Jenrick, Kemi Badenoch, James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat. Now, the first 2 are seen as the front runners. Robert Jenrick's team believe that he will make it to the final 2. Kemi Badenoch's team believe that she will win if she gets to the final 2, but they suspect that there may be some dirty tricks going on to stop her getting to the members. So at the moment, they will be making speeches. They'll be talking to MPs and members. They've got to persuade MPs. It will be MPs that choose the final 2 to go through to the membership, and then the membership will have a couple of weeks to decide who ultimately becomes Conservative leader.
OK, Catherine, thank you very much indeed. It is going to be interesting, and, you know, it's all to play for as far as they're concerned. All 4 of those leadership candidates will be joining our deputy political editor, Tom Harwood, live on GB News from 9:30. So don't miss that.
Now, the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, has spoken to the Lebanese Prime Minister following a series of Israeli airstrikes on Beirut.
In a post on X, the Foreign Secretary said they'd agreed on the need for an immediate ceasefire to bring an end to the bloodshed.
This comes after the terrorist group Hezbollah confirmed their leader has been killed in airstrikes on southern Lebanon.
Israeli correspondent for the Daily Telegraph, Yossam Confino, joins us now. Good to see you, Yossam. It's slightly bizarre, isn't it, that our Foreign Secretary here is agreeing with the Lebanese Prime Minister that there should be a ceasefire, because it's far from what Israel seems to want.
We do live in a twilight zone now where up is down and down is up. So terrorist leaders, international system comes to the rescue of international terrorist organizations, which is astonishing. I don't recall Starmer's government calling for a ceasefire in the previous months where they've been in power, where Hezbollah has committed acts of terrorism and war crimes on a daily basis by firing rockets indiscriminately at Israeli cities. But of course, when Israel hits back, which they do, and they usually do it very hard, then you hear people like Keir Starmer and other world leaders call for an immediate ceasefire. They could also just call on Hezbollah to adhere to the UN Security Resolution from 2006. There's already a resolution in place about the ceasefire. Nevertheless, Israel is not backing down. Israel sees this as a golden opportunity to once and for all wipe out Hezbollah as much as possible. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Israel cannot, the same way as with Hamas, wipe out an ideology and organization like Hezbollah by going into Lebanon. But it can really severely damage them and prevent them from being able to fire long-range rockets all across Israel.
We know what Benjamin Netanyahu thinks, but what do the Israeli people think of this? I mean, would they just welcome a ceasefire full stop, or do they want to see the total destruction of Hezbollah?
Well, once they actually agree with Netanyahu, at least most Israelis, they're fed up. For a year, they've been attacked on a daily basis by Hezbollah. Nearly 50 people have been killed, 26 civilians, including 12 children, 60,000 people internally displaced along the border. They've been poking the bear, so to say, for a year, and Israelis are fed up. So they are ready to seize this opportunity. They give their support, maybe not so much for Netanyahu, but for the government as a whole, and for the military, of course, to go out and to do whatever they have to do to create stability along Israel's border with Lebanon.
Well, that's an interesting phrase, creating stability, because, I mean, that makes it seem like they're sort of isolated incidents, but, of course, there is this sort of cohesion, isn't there? I mean, with Iran being at the centre of it. How is Iran playing into this? What reaction are we seeing?
I'm happy that you're mentioning it, because Iran is behind all of this, obviously, as we all know. They're sponsoring Hezbollah, they're sponsoring Hamas and Islamic Jihad and the Houthi rebels. Basically, everyone who's attacking Israel right now is being sponsored by Iran. Iran has once again said that Israel will be punished, but if we listen to the rhetoric coming from Iran, it is the same aggressive Middle East rhetoric that we hear often, where 9 out of 10 times it's just hot air. They don't really do anything. Once in a while, they actually do follow up on their threats, and when they did last time, they fired ballistic missiles in Israel in April. But for example, in July, when Israel took out Hamas's leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, Iran threatened with major attacks and whatnot. It's been 2 months, they haven't done a single thing. So Iran has vastly overplayed their cards. They are now being exposed, I think, by Israel, because Israel can finally focus its military aggressiveness at Iran's allies, Hezbollah and the Houthi rebels, and Iran itself. And they're humiliating Iran and Hezbollah on a daily basis right now. So they had a good long run, but now, after Israel is done focusing on Hamas and Gaza, I think they should be worried about what comes next for them.
Well, I mean, you've been reporting from that part of the world on these issues for many years. What do you think is going to happen next?
Look, one of two things. Either Iran will actually back up their words with actions and they'll start attacking Israel. And if they do, Israel might seize the opportunity and wipe out the Iranian regime, try to assassinate some of the leading figures, such as Ayatollah Khamenei, the leaders of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. They could try to wipe out the regime, which is, of course, a super difficult task. It's much more difficult than Hezbollah. But they could. Or Iran will back down. They will try to come up with some sort of attack on Israel that's not really going to hurt them, but that they can take back to their people as some sort of a victory and say, look how we punish the Zionist dogs, as they usually call us. And it's one of those two options, really. But I don't think that Iran is going to go to a war head-on with Israel right now, because simply they'll be wiped out not only by Israel, but also by the United States.
OK, Yossam, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed.
Bleak outlook.
It is, isn't it? A good insight from Yossam, though. He always knows his stuff because he's there on the ground.
Well, that's right. And he takes a very good overview, I think, of everything, doesn't he? He mentions things that most of us often miss.
It's such a complicated situation, as it always is out there. Right, it's 18 minutes past 7. Let's have a look at some of the other stories heading into the newsroom this morning.
Well, the clean-up begins after Hurricane Helene swept through the southeast of the United States, leaving at least 64 people dead and millions without power. Helene was one of the most powerful storms ever to hit the United States.
Well, wild weather has also devastated Nepal. More than 100 dead, 64 missing as flooding and landslides hit Kathmandu. It's the highest recorded rainfall since 1970, as all divisions of security forces have been ordered to help.
SpaceX has launched its mission to bring back those 2 astronauts who've been stranded on the International Space Station since June. The Dragon capsule, which has 2 empty seats for Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, lifted off from Cape Canaveral last night. They hope to bring back the stranded pair in February next year.
That's what I don't understand.
The rocket's going up there.
So it's putting the capsule up now, but it can't bring them back till February.
That's odd. There must be a reason.
Why.
There will be. Find out why.
There will be a reason. I just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But it's a long time. I mean, they'll be having a whale of a time, I should imagine.
I don't think it would be a huge problem, apart from the things they've got to do back home, you know, if you've left the
washing on.
but I can imagine that they're astronauts. They won't be upset at staying out there much longer.
No. It's still February.
I just don't understand why. Yes, if the rocket's gone up there, why can't it come back?
Presumably the 2 who've gone up there are also planning to stay.
Yeah.
So
you mustn't interrupt one mission.
No.
I
don't know. Would it cost that much to send up a capsule just to bring them back?
Oh, probably a fortune. Yeah. Oh well.
There you go. It's not like getting an Uber, is it? I suppose.
I don't think so.
No. Right, let's see what the weather's going to do for you.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be wet and windy in the west today with outbreaks of heavy rain and strong winds, but generally drier in the east with some hazy sunshine. But it's a chilly start to the day, especially where we've seen some clear skies, but bright skies to start, especially across Scotland and across eastern parts of England. But further towards the west, we have an area of low pressure that's bringing in some strong gusty winds, and the Met Office have got a yellow wind warning in force for Wales and the southwest of England. So expect gusts of 50 to 60 miles per hour. Mild here though, but probably unpleasant, feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine further east you go. So through Sunday evening then, we've got heavy spells of rain and a rain warning that will also come into force later. So heavy spells of rain, especially over the highest ground of Devon, Cornwall and also Wales. Turning cloudier across Northern Ireland with further spells of rain here, but generally dry across parts of Scotland with some clear skies to go into Sunday evening. But for many of us, it's going to be turning increasingly unsettled with outbreaks of rain continuing to push their way north and eastwards, coming into much of Wales, into the Midlands and then in towards the southeast of England. So like I said, we do have a Met Office rain warning in force, so expect further flooding and some difficult driving conditions as well. But that will lead to a mild night with many places seeing largely cloudy skies. And we also still hold on to some strong winds, especially towards the south and west as we start Monday morning. But Monday looks generally unsettled for a lot of us, with outbreaks of rain and a lot of cloud around. So unsettled across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland as well, and then heavy spells of rain wrapping around this low pressure system, drier as we go later on in the southwest.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's £36,000 time.
Oh, it's a lot of money, especially when you think tax-free. Nasty taxman can't get his hands on any of that.
It's our great British giveaway.
Yes.
Our biggest prize of the year, and it could be yours. Here are the details you need.
They're still watching on demand. Good luck.
Yeah, best of luck to you. Now, still to come, is the United Nations actually fit for purpose? We're going to debate that next.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, we're going to have a look at the sport. Ada McGee is here. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can we kick off with Yannick Sinner? Tennis, world #1, cleared of a doping charge, but it's reared its head again.
It has, yeah. I mean, I think it's hugely important because, as you said, he's the world #1. He's the poster boy of world tennis right now. He's just won the US Open. His ascension to the top of the game has been marked throughout the year. It really has. I mean, it was very much this time last year all about Alcaraz and the enduring legacy of the rivalry between him and Djokovic. But Sinner creeps up from nowhere. I'm not making any inferences there whatsoever. But, look, he was cleared of 2 counts of doping at the start of the US Open. It kind of marred the start of the tournament. It was owing to something that was surfaced back in March at the Indian Wells competition, which is a pretty big tournament in its own right. He then goes on to win the US Open, accounting for Jack Draper, of course, in the semi-final. And he looks
mates, aren't they, actually?
Yeah, they're friends. Yeah, most of the top players have big respect for each other, actually. But yeah, they are quite friendly. And actually, he looks well worth the win. He was a comfortable winner of the tournament. And now, I've not recalled this happening too many times, but the World Anti-Doping Agency, known as WADA, have appealed via the Court of Arbitration for Sport, CAS, and said that we believe that your finding is wrong. And the finding of the independent tribunal is wrong, and we recommend that he is banned for 1 to 2 years. Now, what's also compelling about this is how long this is going to take, because these things don't happen quickly.
And have there been any more tests in between as well?
No, well, yeah, there will have been. Yeah, there will have been. But you only really find out about them if there's something adverse that comes up. But I mean, or unless it's delayed for some reason. But look, I mean, we're entering a relatively fallow period in the tennis season right now. I mean, we've had a hell of a schedule. You had the French Open, Wimbledon, you had the Olympics, then the US Open, and so Davis Cup as well, which we've reported on in the last few weeks. And so it's a relatively quiet period now. And I think you might see some stuff coming out about it. But for a world number one who's just won the US Open, and of course there's no suggestion of any wrongdoing right now. And from his part, he would say that he's completely innocent. And having already been absolved of this, then he might say that it's well, apart from the else, it's very embarrassing because he was when it was announced yesterday. Although he was told about it a couple of days ago, he was competing at the China Open, so it's not a good look for the sport whatsoever.
No, it's not. It's messy, isn't it? Talking about big rivalries, though, what's going on with Mikel Arteta and Pep Guardiola? Because there was this talk of all-out war.
Yeah.
But now Arteta's saying...
It's called an olive branch. Yeah, exactly. Well, look, it's Sorcerer's Apprentice stuff, isn't it? I love that phrase. Yeah. And I learnt it at school, funnily enough. I've been waiting to use it in my professional career, but here's my opportunity. So...
Oh, you say professional.
Arteta his side was accused of engaging the dark arts last week as they got a 2-2 draw up at Manchester City. Now, it's a very difficult thing to do, especially with 10 men. They almost got a win, Anne. And so it almost paid dividends. But so this little spat was generated, and us in the media, it goes back to my early days in the business when Fergie and Wenger were at each other's throat. We loved it when they used to have a go at each other, and we're trying to manufacture something here to some degree. And so Arteta, whose side won 4-2 yesterday against Leicester and really reaffirmed their title ambitions, he was asked after the match, is this going to be the enduring rivalry of our generation? What's going on between you two? Have you fallen out? And he wanted to pour cold water on the whole thing. And this is his quote, actually, which I thought was quite nice. This is Arteta talking about Pep Guardiola, who he worked for, by the way, at Manchester City as assistant manager for 3.5 years. He said, "I've admired him since I was 10 years old. I respect him profoundly. I'm so grateful for everything he did for me and continues to do for me. If someone wants to damage the relationship, that's not in my hands." So I wonder whether there's some method in what he's trying to do well in terms of what happens on the pitch, because I don't think it suits anyone to go into a psychological battle with somebody who's been as successful as Pep Guardiola. You're going to come off worse in that. So dampen it now. Focus back on what's happening on the pitch. It worked yesterday. Arsenal were pegged back to 2-2 against Leicester, but won out 4-2 in the end, and they're right back in the title race now. And City dropped points at Newcastle, of course.
Yes, they did. So I was just... My mind was just somewhere else, because talking of managers...
Yeah.
I wonder what's going to happen with Ten Hag, because it's Tottenham, Man United today, isn't it?
It is, yeah, 4:30, Old Trafford. And look, Man United, there's always pressure there. When you're the manager, it's a different world to managing Ajax, where he was previously, who were probably the Man United equivalent in Holland, but nonetheless, much bigger stakes this time. He talked in the week when they played FC Twente, who was a team that he actually supported as a kid, and they came away with a 1-1 draw at Old Trafford. He said his side lacked hunger. And I just don't think when you're managing any organisation, if you're saying that troops that you've been in charge of for a couple of years now are lacking hunger, what does it say about your leadership?
Well, that's right. It's up to you.
And possibly that plays into what Stephen's been saying all along. Does he actually want to be there? If you really want to be there and steer the ship correctly in the right direction, do you go and criticise your players, many of whom you've signed and you've brought to the club yourself, and many of whom have also flattered, deceive and failed to live up to
It's negative leadership. You need to inspire, encourage.
You want your players to run through brick walls for you on the pitch. Yeah. You don't do it if your manager just said, look, you lack a bit of hunger. You're not exactly appealing to their professional pride, are you? They're playing against Tottenham at home. Tottenham have had some good results at Old Trafford in the last 4 or 5 years, and they'll be hoping to continue their good progress. But yeah, pressure on Ten Hag, no question about it.
Right. What's the time? Looking at the time, we'd better leave it there, I think, Aidan.
Oh, well.
Because we've got lots to squeeze in, as you know. But thank you very much indeed. We shall see you a little bit later on.
Yeah, right now, don't go away because we're going to be talking about the United Nations. Do you think it's any good? Already we're getting in from our lovely viewers, the UN is a waste of time. Countries just get to do what they want. And if they don't like it, they walk out. And we have seen that, so we'll be debating that in a couple of moments.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, as the United Nations summit in New York has come to a close, we've seen world leaders gather, of course, to discuss the big issues, Middle East conflict, top of the agenda at the moment.
But after almost 80 years after the organisation was founded, you have to ask, is the United Nations past its sell-by date?
Well, to debate this, we're joined by founder of the Integrity Sanctuary, James Wasserstrom, who's in Turkey, and former Labour MP and Minister of State for Europe, Dennis McShane, who's here in the studio. Morning to you both.
Morning.
James, I mean, you worked for the UN for the best part of 30 years. Is it doing the job it's meant to do?
No. I would say absolutely not. I think the great question you put forward is the UN fit for purpose, and I don't think anyone in the diplomatic corps anymore believes that it is. And I certainly am in touch with many who question its relevance. It's humanitarian and political. I think those are the two areas that people are most familiar with. And politically, of course, it's
Oh, we've lost that signal.
Irrelevant because of the freeze in the Security Council. And as far as humanitarian waste and abuse, I think it could be actually outsourced, the humanitarian work. In fact, it is outsourced. So it's not fit for purpose.
Dennis McShane, your view?
I share some of that. It's the 50th anniversary since Turkey invaded Cyprus, paratroopers floated in, Britain could have intervened, did it, and then Turkey, in effect, annexed about a third of Cyprus, and the UN was powerless because it's only as strong as its member states. Now, what you have to say is no UN what? You really want not anarchy? It's ridiculous hearing people like Erdogan puffing away there. And you should have seen Mr. Vučić, the president of Serbia. I mean, his speech was unbelievable. And he's been treated as a friend of Washington, London, Paris. So, but if you didn't have it, what would you have in its place?
Well, that's a fair question, James, isn't it? There's got to be something there, hasn't there? So should it be scrapped, something new? Can it be reformed?
I'd say that the short answer about reform is no, because that has been tried over and over and over again. And as someone who spent 28 years inside the system, I know very well how easily the Secretariat and others frustrate reform. They really don't want it to happen that's inside the UN. And on outside, I'm not completely convinced that it's only as strong as its member states. I've heard that argument over and over again. Actually, it's the Secretariat which wields an enormous amount of power because it more or less outlasts all of the diplomats who manage the UN from other countries in the committees of the UN, which are responsible for overseeing its management. And whenever reforms come up, they're usually frustrated. And as having personally experienced the fraud, waste, and abuse myself of the UN in most of its guises, not all, but most, it's an exercise in disappointment, to say the least.
Dennis McShane, I mean, it seemed like a brilliant idea when it was set up, and that we all hear the views of all of the different countries. They all get their chance to say things. The trouble is, just recently, actually not just recently, it's always happened, is that other leaders just walk out when they don't want to hear what another country has got to say. So it doesn't actually do anything anymore, does it?
You can't change them to their seats. I mean, I completely agree with James, don't get me wrong, because I worked in government for 8 years. You want to try a UN bureaucracy? Welcome to British government bureaucracy. Welcome to Pentagon bureaucracy. Whisper it not, welcome to European Union Commission bureaucracy. That is the nature of the bureaucratic beast. I would just slightly go off beam and say, look at all the UN agencies, the WHO, the World Health Organization, the World Meteorological Organization, the Refugee Relief, the International Labour Organization that tries to bring some labour fairness around the world. They, I think, do very, very good work, but when you put the big cheeses up there, the Erdogans and the Trumps and the Johnsons at the UN, no, they just sort of go on an ego trip, and the world yawns and hopes that some sensible diplomats, I mean, it's diplomats who do the ironwork, people like James when he worked there, and I wouldn't disparage the efforts to try and make the world just work a little bit better, not solve all the problems.
Yeah, just a very quick thought, James, because, I mean, obviously there's a lot going on, as you've both indicated, behind the scenes that most of us aren't aware of. But on the front line, as it were, a lot of people say, well, how can any of it work when permanent members have got a veto? And when it comes to the big issues of the last 30 or 40 years, actually, everything can just get vetoed. So nothing does actually happen that way.
That's exactly right. I mean, I think the idea of the veto, which might have been relevant, as Anne put it 80 years ago, is irrelevant now. I mean, you cannot get any serious work done through the Security Council. As you've rightly pointed out, it's frustrated and vetoed, and people abuse and abuse it. And there's where the reform has failed, right? There's really no way, I think, politically to change that system. But I think, in my view, as someone who was victimized by the UN, as well as and I still believe in the ideals, the Charter is extremely impressive, and I firmly believe in the ideals of the Charter. but not the organization the way it's currently structured. I don't see that it can. And honestly, I've said before, if you could restart the whole thing, which of course is pie in the sky, then you could really rebuild it in a way that it could be truly functional, including the specialized agencies. I've worked for both, so it's really a Medusa.
OK, look, fascinating talking to both of you this morning. James Wasserstrom, Dennis McShane, thanks both very much indeed.
Do stay with us. We're going to be going through the newspapers in just a tick.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
In October, a new collection of portraits will be unveiled which record some of the most impactful women of modern times, including Elizabeth Taylor in her role as Cleopatra, Beyoncé, Princess Diana and Veronica Lake. The pieces were created in tandem by the artistic duo Sequin Kay and Jerry Kinch, and they join me now. Jerry, tell us a bit about how you got into making these portraits.
Yeah, so Sequin and I have been walking in and out of each other's lives for like 9 or 10 years now. And although her art is very different to my art, we've always sort of said we'll do something together, you know. I mean, her work with crystals is so different to my traditional oil painting. And it's like, you know, they say the East is East and West is West and never the twain shall meet. But we kind of proved an exception to that rule. And we've done something here quite unique, you know. Painting's been my whole life, you know, ever since I was a child, you know. It's been something that's always kept me in good stead, you know. It's something that I think jumped over from my grandfather. He was a painter of the churches in Ireland, and ever since I was a child, I just painted naturally. And you know, it's always been a way for me to earn a living as well.
Sequin, as I speak to you, I hope we're going to reveal a portrait that has been brought in. This is a 6-foot portrait of Veronica Lake. And to Jerry's work, you have applied what I would call sequins, Swarovski crystals. How do you apply them?
The Swarovski crystals have been applied one by one in a sort of a meditative state. And I use a syringe with the strongest glue in the world and also some little tools. And they're just placed on one by one. So it's sort of like a modern-day pointillism, I would say.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
7:46. Just want to show you some beautiful sunrises. We're talking about showed you earlier on the one over London today, but of course London's London. What about the rest of the UK?
Wowee!
And if you're listening on the radio this morning, have a look out the window, see how beautiful it is. We've got pictures there. Well, that's a small one.
It's a very small one.
Cornwall, Worcestershire, Swansea, Lancaster, South Wales, and North Wales. All beautiful, all different shades.
What was it with the weather that has given us this amazing sunrises this morning?
Low cloud.
Something's happening.
It's absolutely beautiful. So thank you to all of them who've sent them in. Your sister's been sending some in as well.
Yes, I think we might come to that one. But yeah, I mean, there must be something we must ask a meteorologist. Look at that. I mean, that is literally a sunrise coming over the sea. That's the one from my sister. She's lucky enough to live by the sea in the south coast, and she also spotted this in the water. And that she was saying to me, is that a sea lion or a seal? but she sort of Google imaged it, and it is a seal, a common grey seal, which is apparently common on the south coast, but there he is.
Nothing common about him.
Well, no, exactly, isn't he?
Happy little chap.
Anyway, if you've got
Right.
any more lovely pictures, we'd love to see them, but I guess the sun has risen most places
Yes,
now.
it will have done by now, but thanks for sending those in. Right, let's see what's in the papers with editor of Spike, Tom Slater, and political commentator Lynn May. Good morning.
Good morning.
What should we start with, Lynn?
Oh, what should we start with?
What do you fancy?
I'm going to say about Boris's new view on COVID. So, a bit of a contradiction here, where it says, Mail page 9, it saved lives, but now I'm not sure lockdown works. Well, if it saved lives, then it kind of did work. But, you know, so many people criticise the government for how they dealt with it. But if you remember, we were discussing this earlier, Tom, if you remember the first images that we saw from China with people literally shaking, falling over, fits, you know, we didn't really know what COVID was. We didn't know how it happened.
No, and then we saw the pictures of what was the killer, excuse the phrase, was the pictures from northern Italy, where there were people just piled up in the corridors.
Exactly.
The death rate there was horrific. Well, we had to follow suit, didn't we?
Well, this is the thing, and I think, let's say, for example, if we didn't do the rollout, which I think was brilliant in terms of the vaccine, say we couldn't get it done for whatever reason, and there were so many more deaths, we would have been hammering, I'd rather be safe than sorry. So we already had over 200,000 deaths. Yes, many were the vulnerable, underlying health conditions, the elderly, but people seem to forget, you know, many people mentioned, well, we should have just locked them up. But many people live with young people, carers are younger, or whatever the case may be. I don't think, financially and locking up, the government did a bad job.
And, of course, the important thing about reflecting on that is to ask the question, what would we do next time? And I think, don't we as a country actually probably understand that I think very few people would accept a lockdown again?
They would, but then let's say there's a whole completely different disease that we've never heard of. How would you deal with that?
Well,
but I think the difficulty is, and I think something that Boris now has to reckon with, is the fact that he had these instincts that maybe lockdown wasn't the right path to go down. He seemed very conflicted in the early days. Often a lot of the briefing and the discussion was about him being the one who was, you know, less quick to follow the supposedly expert advice. And we're now seeing the unintended consequences, but the known consequences of lockdown in terms of the economy, in terms of mental health, in terms of kids' progression through education. There is a very strong case that the cure is worse than the disease in this situation. I think where Boris is concerned, he gets no.
I know.
I mean, this is the thing. I totally get it. People aren't happy. I totally get it. But there was never going to be a situation where everyone was happy.
Very
Either
true.
more people, either we wouldn't have lockdown, you know, young people would be better off and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Or more people would have died.
But it's not a choice between lockdown and doing nothing. I think that was the point. Other countries did a much better job
how can you
of doing
tailor
things
it
like
with
protecting.
such little time? I think it would have been very hard to have a much more bespoke. They started to do that, didn't they? Where, OK, we're letting you out now, distancing, social distancing, all the rest of it. But we weren't alone. If you look at the majority of the world, we were all kind of following suit, masks, distancing. And
But then you do have the Swedish example, where
I know,
when it
we're
comes
so
to the
different to
economy and when it
Sweden,
comes
though.
No, it's
like
true,
the
but there's still
demographics so different.
There was still a lot more debate that could have taken place, and also there was a nervousness about even having that discussion. I understand why politicians in the early days made that move, because everyone else was doing it, because we didn't know. But as the months and in time years rolled on, I think people start to look at
what people got frustrated and upset about was because they then saw the same people that gave us laws, you know, having parties, and is it really serious if you're locking us up, stopping us from working, and you're there having an ease up?
Yeah, no, that's very true.
I think the interesting thing about saying, well, we could have been more discussion, is discussion with who? Because you can't do it within Parliament over something like that, because people come in with the wrong perspective. They've got their political heads on, which is why they said we're following the science.
Yeah, but then we found that the
science was a little bit...
No, but I mean, I have to say, I'm not saying it was all right, far from it. I just think they're between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, agreed.
In retrospect, don't you think the bubble system, which obviously was developed later, is probably the best way?
Yeah, that was quite good, yeah.
Because that doesn't mean in some cases, it does mean you're separating young people in the same family from grannies. But that was the problem. That was why we kept kids out of school.
And if more effort had been put into actually doing things like protecting care homes, which accounted for, a third of the deaths, there was all sorts of measures that could have been taken, properly throwing an iron rig, as Matt Hancock once put it, around those care homes. People were making suggestions you should treat them just during the pandemic, almost like oil rigs. People go and work there for a few weeks and months at a time, then get a week off. They're paid to reflect that. These things just weren't necessarily even implemented, even when we were months and more than a year ago.
Maybe we were reactionary and panic-driven.
There's a lot to be learnt from it.
Yeah.
Can I just have a look at this one? Because I'm fascinated by this, and I think it's a great idea, actually. It's Mail on Sunday. The Health Secretary is looking at the NHS app and saying it could be revamped by Netflix. It sounds extraordinary, but if you try to use the NHS app, which I do all the time, it can be a bit of a blooming nightmare.
Yeah, when I first saw this, I thought, is there going to be a show about it? Is there going to be a programme? And I thought, no, OK, maybe Netflix are so forward-thinking in how they create their technology. Maybe they will be the ones to actually assist us with how clunky our current NHS app is. But I wonder how that conversation developed and why they chose Netflix to do it.
Well, yeah. But I suppose it's popular, it flows. I mean, it works. Get a lot of these professional apps that work really nicely, don't they? But then when you get anything which is, government-based, it's
I know.
hopeless.
Even trying to navigate like a local government website to try and log on to do something, you just think this was like it was made in 2002. So it's fascinating how whenever the government tries to do something like this, they fail at it miserably.
Very odd. Very odd.
I don't understand that. I quite like the NHS app.
Do you?
It works for me.
What do you use it for? I only used it when there was COVID.
Yeah, I don't think I've touched it since.
No, I use it for ordering repeat prescriptions and asking for things like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You see, my GP's the same. He used to do it all on their website. Now they've shifted it all over to the NHS app.
And do you find it to be good?
No.
Oh.
I think
So it needs to change.
There you go.
Do you?
Well, it's just for me.
Right, thanks both. We'll see you later on.
Thank you.
Here's the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be wet and windy in the west today with outbreaks of heavy rain and strong winds, but generally drier in the east with some hazy sunshine. But it's a chilly start to the day, especially where we've seen some clear skies, but bright skies to start, especially across Scotland and across eastern parts of England. But further towards the west, we have an area of low pressure that's bringing in some strong gusty winds, and the Met Office have got a yellow wind warning in force for Wales and the southwest of England. So expect gusts of 50 to 60 miles per hour. Mild here though, but probably unpleasant, feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine further east you go. So through Sunday evening then, we've got heavy spells of rain and a rain warning that will also come into force later. So heavy spells of rain, especially over the highest ground of Devon, Cornwall and also Wales. Turning cloudier across Northern Ireland with further spells of rain here, but generally dry across parts of Scotland with some clear skies to go into Sunday evening. But for many of us, it's going to be turning increasingly unsettled with outbreaks of rain continuing to push their way north and eastwards, coming into much of Wales, into the Midlands and then in towards the southeast of England. So like I said, we do have a Met Office rain warning in force, so expect further flooding and some difficult driving conditions as well. But that will lead to a milder night with many places seeing largely cloudy skies. And we also still hold on to some strong winds, especially towards the south and west as we start Monday morning. But Monday looks generally unsettled for a lot of us with outbreaks of rain and a lot of cloud around. So unsettled across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland as well, and then heavy spells of rain wrapping around this low pressure system, drier as we go later on in the southwest.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
They suck. I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. Internal feud set to dominate the Conservative Party conference, which kicks off today.
And Rishi Sunak is going to leave early, apparently, on this day, day one, to avoid the limelight of the leadership contest.
Well, that's as Kemi Badenoch, Robert Jenrick, James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat will use the next days to try to win over members.
Ashamed of her party, Rosie Duffield quits Labour with a stinging rebuke of Keir Starmer, accusing the Prime Minister of hypocrisy.
Israel braces for revenge following the killing of the Hezbollah leader yesterday. Benjamin Netanyahu called it a historic turning point.
The secrets of the Queen's final days revealed by Boris Johnson, including some crucial advice she had for him.
There was history made at Stamford Bridge as Chelsea's Cole Palmer became the first player to score 4 goals in the first half of a game. There were Premier League wins too for Arsenal and Liverpool. And in cricket, England are on the verge of completing a stunning ODI turnaround against Australia in Bristol.
It's going to be an unsettled day in the west with outbreaks of heavy rain and stronger winds, but drier in the east. I'll have all of the latest coming up shortly.
Just gone 8 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
It's an interesting one from Jack on Boris Johnson, because he's getting everywhere at the minute, with his memoir being serialised. Jack says, I used to think Boris Johnson was entertaining, but now that he's spoken about the Queen, I think the man's a rat. Which is a little bit harsh, perhaps, Jack, but I find it uncomfortable because you wouldn't talk about anything you did with the Queen, would it? It was all very...
But he doesn't give away very much at all. Oh, he doesn't.
Well, probably not, but...
But, I mean, don't you think anyone who's, like a Prime Minister who's had regular contact with the Queen would want to tell you a few stories about it? They want to show off a bit, don't they?
Well, they would, yeah, but you sort of don't, do you?
Depends if you've got a book out or not.
Well you know,
if she ever expressed any political views, you would not betray those, and he doesn't.
No, but the fact she made a cheeky comment about Macron.
Yes, that's as naughty as I think he thought he could go.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's.
I'm just trying to find the little bit of advice she did give him. It was basically that no, I'll find it. But it was basically a sort of something saying that don't get too worked up about anything because life goes on, sort of thing.
Oh, well, that is a good bit of advice.
Yeah.
Do you think that when someone's passed away as well, it's a bit of a free hit because you're not going to get?
Well, of course it is.
Right?
Yes.
Well, no, not really. Not really.
Unless there was anyone else in the room.
I don't know. It's all this. So there's lots of books and things. I mean, I just don't know how interesting well, it is interesting, but how important it is, because it's just someone's perspective, isn't it?
Yes.
And so you can't you cannot believe one person's side of a story.
All right, there's this little
Even
bit...
if it's totally true, you've got to...
Of course, yeah. He said, on one occasion, I was bellyaching about the miseries of COVID, the human toll and the awful economic consequences. Oh, well, she said briskly, I suppose we will all just have to start again. And he says, I realised that she spoke with the historical knowledge of someone who'd actually served in uniform in the Second World War and whose first Prime Minister was Winston Churchill. She knew her kingdom was infinitely capable of rebounding and recovering.
Oh, well, see, that's nice.
That's nice.
That is nice.
Yeah.
That is nice. Yeah, there you go. I don't know. It's just one of those weird things. I feel very protective of anything to do with the Queen.
I still feel upset reading about her. You know, I still miss her, don't you?
2 years ago.
I know.
2 years.
Yeah.
It's frightening.
I know. It's one of those people I just never thought I can imagine
Never
life
thought
without
would
her.
die.
Yeah.
And I thought we'd never be able to manage without her.
Yeah.
And yes, we're managing.
Yeah. Just.
Yeah, we're hanging on in there.
I don't know, though. I think the King is doing a very good job.
I think he's doing a great job.
Very good. He was up at Holyrood yesterday,
Yeah.
marking 25 years.
In his kilt.
Yes, in his kilt.
Looking very
25
splendid.
years of the Scottish Parliament being reformed.
And, you know, I think of Camilla as well. I mean, she's such a support for him. She never asked to be Queen. It's a funny thing to say, and I know a lot of people will be throwing bricks at television as I say it, but she didn't. I mean, she fell in love with him, but I don't think would ever have thought of being Queen. I always think it must be so funny for her family.
Yes.
I mean, Tom Parker Bowles was writing in one of the newspapers yesterday about cookery. And, you know, I just think his mother's the Queen. Isn't that weird? It must be a very strange thing. And her sisters said they found it very difficult curtsying to her.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, you'd have to, though, wouldn't you?
But she's there at the side of the King all the time, being absolutely stalwart. And everybody who's met her... Well, you've met her, haven't you? Says she's lovely. So you have to just sort of admire her too.
Yes, I was really impressed when I met her. Just because it was a charity event and she was completely across the subject and I just thought you sort of expect them just a bit like those comedy shows where you see supposed royals and they just say, oh yes, lovely to meet you, but actually she was much more engaged than that, and it was
That's
really impressive.
Yeah, I think they're doing really well, but we still miss the Queen, the Queen.
We do. Right, let's talk about internal feuding, not between me and Anne.
No.
We don't feud, do we? No. There's plenty going on in the Conservative Party, of course, so it needs to stop, according to Rishi Sunak, who's going to talk, or at least deliver a speech to the Conservative Party conference in Birmingham today. Will anybody listen?
It's not going to be an easy speech to make, is it? And I wonder how he'll be received. Well, he's not hanging around long, apparently, because he's returning to London after he's made that speech, because he feels that the conference then becomes an audition for the 4 prospective leadership candidates.
It was in 2005 at Tory conference when David Cameron turned his fortunes around and became leader.
And so you could say it's all to play for. Look at them. Those 4, one of them will be the leader. 121 Conservative MPs deciding the fate of the candidates, choosing 2.
Well, all of this happening whilst there are big rows going on in the Labour Party.
Because yesterday, Rosie Duffield dramatically quit the party over the Cabinet's freebies and, of course, the winter fuel allowance row.
Let's head to Birmingham. Our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Let's just start with Rosie Duffield, should we? I mean, how problematic is it for the Prime Minister? I mean, I know it's not going to stop have any significant problems for him in one sense, because he's got such a big majority, but to have someone resign from the party less than 3 months after an election is extraordinary.
It is. It's the earliest that somebody has quit a party after coming into government in recent political history, and it shows that Sir Keir Starmer's problems over donations are not going away, because this has breathed new life into all of that. So Rosie Duffield has resigned from Labour with immediate effect. She will sit as independent MP for Canterbury. She wrote quite an excoriating letter to the Prime Minister, 2 pages. Just one of the lines was, the sleaze, nepotism and apparent avarice are off the scale. I am so ashamed of what you and your inner circle have done to tarnish and humiliate our once proud party. Now, she talks of his leadership. She says that he never regularly engaged with backbench MPs, that he lacks political instincts. She criticised him over the fact that they're sticking with the two-child benefit cap introduced by the Conservatives, and the fact that they are means testing the winter fuel allowance for pensioners. And she contrasted those actions with the fact that he has taken well over £100,000 now in donations, in freebies, about £32,000 now in clothes and spectacles, and she's horrified by this. It is worth saying that she's had an unhappy relationship with the Labour leadership for a long time. Safe spaces for women. That's brought her into conflict with some in the trans community. She felt that the Labour leadership did not support her. She felt gaslit, in effect. But Pat McFadden, speaking this morning, Cabinet Office Minister, has said, I'm sorry she's made the decision, but she's been unhappy for a long time, but certainly piling on the problems for our pretty new Prime Minister.
Yes, he's got a lot to cope with at the moment, hasn't he? How do you think Rishi Sunak is going to be today, making that probably quite awkward speech to the Tory faithful, and then he's sort of moving off straight back to London?
Yes, he came last night. He's leaving tonight. He's going to be speaking to Conservative Party members at 5 o'clock. It's billed as a thank you reception to say thank you to them. But then he wants to get out of the picture because, of course, it's not about him anymore. It's about one of the four, Robert Jenrick, James Cleverly, Kemi Badenoch, Tom Tugendhat, who come November the 2nd will be leading the Conservative Party. Now, they will be here, they'll be doing question and answer sessions, they'll be trying to butter up MPs, butter up members, because on October the 10th, the Conservative MPs will whittle those four down to two, and then Conservative Party members will make the final pick of those two, and we'll get the new leader on November the 2nd. Worth saying that William Hague, Lord Hague as he is now, that introduced the rule that the Tory members got to make the final pick, has now said that he thinks it would be better if the leaders were picked by MPs, because the membership is now so small. But that is not going to happen, and it looks like Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch are currently ahead with the members and in the sort of bookies. But Kemi Badenoch particularly isn't certain of making the final two, because she's not to every MP's taste, and she worries that there may be some sort of lending of votes to keep her out of the final two, that votes may be lent to James Cleverly or to Tom Tugendhat, two of the more sort of centrist candidates, both Jenrick and Badenoch being seen as more on the right of the party.
Thank you. Well, all four leadership candidates are going to be talking to our deputy political editor, Tom Harwood, live on GB News at 9:30 this morning.
Who's your money on, eh?
I don't know.
Difficult choice, isn't it?
There's no
There's
one
no
stand
obvious
out.
star yet.
No.
But then, as you pointed out, David Cameron was a rookie back then.
He was.
And suddenly came forward as a very impressive candidate.
Yeah, and he ignited the party. I know a lot of people are critical now. He's very what you call sort of centrist, which isn't the in thing at the moment. But at the time, he reignited the appetite for the party. So maybe...
And he was seen as young and dynamic as well,
Yes.
and that helped.
Have you got any young dynamic? Well, I suppose Robert Jenrick's probably the youngest, is he? Or, well, in terms of the men, anyway. I don't know how old Kemi Badenoch is.
No.
So there you go.
No. It'll be an interesting one. Anyway, it'll be great to see them all being interviewed today here on GB News. Right, 12 minutes past 8, the former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has written in today's Mail on Sunday, well, they're serialising his new book, he's written about the final meeting he had with the late Queen.
In the extracts published from his memoir, he claims he'd known for more than a year that she had a form of bone cancer.
Yeah, that came as a bit of a surprise to both of us, actually, although it has been pointed out to us by many of our viewers this morning, thank you very much, that actually it was being talked about that she had some form of bone cancer. Then he also says in his memoir, he sort of shares the advice he received from the late Queen, who said there's no point in bitterness over the events that led to his departure.
It's a very good point.
Yeah.
She was a wise woman.
She was, wasn't she? Do you think she started out wise? Has she always been wise?
No. I think it just comes with age, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's what you miss to a certain extent, isn't it? Joining us live from Devon is former BBC Royal correspondent Jenny Bond. Morning, Jenny.
Good morning.
I bet you had a lovely sunrise in Devon today, did you? We've had wonderful sunrises from all over.
No, it's cloudy. The sea is really, really rough out there. It's quite dramatic, actually.
Oh, wow, OK. Not what I expected. Well, talking of, the climate at the moment, what do you think of Boris Johnson and what he's writing in his memoirs about the Queen? Should he be writing about those private audiences he had?
I think he's been reasonably discreet. Bits and pieces of audiences by prime ministers and with the Queen have come out in the past. I remember Tony Blair revealing that there were only two people he could really tell everything to. One was the wife and the other was the Queen. But he has confirmed some suggestions that we had been hearing about, as you say, the bone cancer. That had been a rumour that had been going around. Officially, the Queen was said to have died simply of old age, but I think it puts a perspective on those last days and months of her life and the pain that we knew she was in, her difficulty with walking, and the monumental effort she must have made to appear on the balcony at the Platinum Jubilee celebrations. It was touch and go until the very end whether she'd do that. Obviously those last few days and months were very, very difficult for her. But he paints a portrait, as you've suggested, of the most wise woman, built on years and years of experience, global experience. And she imparted some of that wisdom to her prime ministers. And Boris Johnson clearly appreciated his meetings with the Queen as much as I've heard other prime ministers have in the past.
Oh, it's interesting then. So in effect, on the bone cancer issue, as you say, it was rumoured, but you're saying it hasn't. This is the first time we've actually had it confirmed. And if that's the case, is that really his place to do that?
No, it's not really his place. And I don't think the palace will be overjoyed that he's put that in the book, because clearly, they didn't announce it, so one must presume that the Queen wanted that kept private. But I have heard it before, so it has been somewhat in the public domain. But no, I don't think they'll be well pleased. I don't think they'll mind the rest of it, though, because the portrait is very sympathetic indeed of our late Queen.
He says that there were two bits of advice that she literally gave him. One was not to be bitter, because bitterness doesn't help anything. And the other is about magpies. And it just shows the lighter side. He said that he still freaks out when he sees one single magpie because of this belief that that's bad luck. And she said, yes. But she said, if you see a single magpie, you just say, "Good morning, Mr. Magpie. Today is," and then you give him the date, whatever the date is, and that sorts it out. So she clearly had this sort of light touch as well.
Oh, she did, I think, yes. And she was quite good on one-liners. There's another one that Boris Johnson mentions about President Macron and his wife, because Macron apparently got confused as to whether Northern Ireland was indeed a separate country or part of the UK, and he seemed to think it was a separate country. And the Queen apparently remarked that there was an age difference, an obvious age difference between Macron and his wife. And Boris Johnson said, "Oh, yes, he married his teacher." And she said, "Well, she didn't teach him about history very well, did she?" And that's the kind of humour she had.
Yeah, you hear again and again little... of course, history was her thing, wasn't it? But she really did know her stuff about history. She knew names and dates, and she could trip you up if you got it wrong.
She just didn't know the theory. She had been there. She had done it. She had met them. She had met all these world leaders. And Johnson says in his book, if you couldn't quite remember, I know the president of Kenya or something. Oh, you mean Kenyatta? Yes, of course, because she had met them many times around the world in this incredibly long reign. So I mean, I've heard time and again, and people like me have spouted on for years about this wise head on such experienced shoulders, and then to hear someone like Boris Johnson say, yes, that is exactly what she gave to me. She gave me wisdom and kindness and thoughtfulness, and she would just listen sympathetically with understanding, real understanding of the situation, and then give us the tiniest little nudge of advice. And I think that was what she was so good at.
I mean, we were saying earlier that we miss her. Of course, I think we all still miss her. But we saw the King and the Queen out yesterday in Scotland. And, of course, he, too, fighting cancer. And you start to understand how wearing that must be when you've got to do official royal duties. But he looked well and said he was well. And Camilla's there beside him. They're making a very good job of it, aren't they?
They are making a good job, and you were saying, you know, how you miss her and miss her wisdom and the long reign that she had and how much experience she'd had. But you have to think, you know, Charles is 75, he's not a young man by any means, and he's been on the world scene for decades as well, and he's met most of these people. So, you know, I think his shoulders quite broad and his mind is quite attuned to everything that's going on around the world. Yeah, he is making a great job of it. I just hope he can continue to do so, get through this treatment. He's off to Australia in about 3 weeks' time with Camilla. That's going to be quite testing, I should think. But he's back on the world scene, so that's good news.
It is good news, and it's great to see you again, Jenny. Thanks very much indeed. I hope the weather's not too stormy for you over the next few days. Thank you.
I was just looking at Bonnie King Charlie, as the Sun has it.
Yeah.
Well, that him and Camilla yesterday. She's got a nice tartan edge to her coat.
Yes, absolutely.
But he does look very well.
Yes, he does. Thank goodness.
He does look very well. And lots of well-wishers. Yvonne Macmillan from East Renfrewshire gave him a hug.
Oh, he's had quite a few hugs recently, actually,
has.
hasn't he? From the New Zealand ladies football team. They all gave him a hug.
If I could give him a hug, and which he must have said yes. I quite like the fact that with the New Zealand lot, that was just... He looked so pleased.
He was thrilled.
That I just thought it was... It's not the sort of thing he would normally do, is it? But I like the fact he's a bit more approachable.
Yes,
that's the monarchy developing.
He's the next generation, isn't he?
But he does look well there.
Yeah.
Good. I'm pleased to see it. I'm pleased to see it.
Life goes on, as the Queen pointed out.
I like him immensely.
I do.
And I don't know why. Because it's
a very difficult job.
Yes.
I mean, following his mother, but also it's a very difficult job, full stop, especially when you inherit that role when most people have already retired, frankly. And I think the same for her, for Camilla to suddenly take on this massive job of being Queen. And they seem to be doing very well. And they're being very stoic. And isn't that what we need?
Well, it is. Certainly what we need. Right, shall we have a look at some of the other stories this morning at 8:20? And the clean-up has started after Hurricane Helene swept through the southeast of the US. 64 dead there, millions left without power. Helene, one of the most powerful storms to ever hit the United States.
And wild weather has also devastated Nepal, with more than 100 killed and 64 missing, as flooding and landslides hit Kathmandu. It's the highest recorded rainfall since 1970, as all divisions of their security forces have been ordered to help.
And SpaceX has launched its mission to bring back 2 astronauts who are stranded on the International Space Station. They've been there since June, so up went the Dragon capsule. It's got 2 empty seats for Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams. It took off from Cape Canaveral last night. The sort of surprising news is that once it's up there and it's all docked and all the rest of it, it's not going to be bringing them back until February.
We'll try and find out why for you.
Yes, we will. Right, let's see what the weather's going to do for you today. Here's Catherine.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be wet and windy in the west today with outbreaks of heavy rain and strong winds, but generally drier in the east with some hazy sunshine. But it's a chilly start to the day, especially where we've seen some clear skies, but bright skies to start, especially across Scotland and across eastern parts of England. But further towards the west, we have an area of low pressure that's bringing in some strong gusty winds, and the Met Office have got a yellow wind warning in force for Wales and the southwest of England. So expect gusts of 50 to 60 miles per hour. Mild here though, but probably unpleasant. Feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine. Further east you go. So through Sunday evening then, we've got heavy spells of rain and a rain warning that will also come into force later. So heavy spells of rain, especially over the highest ground of Devon, Cornwall and also Wales. Turning cloudy across Northern Ireland with further spells of rain here, but generally dry across parts of Scotland with some clear skies to go into Sunday evening. But for many of us, it's going to be turning increasingly unsettled, with outbreaks of rain continuing to push their way north and eastwards, coming into much of Wales, into the Midlands, and then in towards the southeast of England. So like I said, we do have a Met Office rain warning in force, so expect further flooding and some difficult driving conditions as well. But that will lead to a milder night, with many places seeing largely cloudy skies. And we also still hold on to some strong winds, especially towards the south and west as we start Monday morning. But Monday looks generally unsettled for a lot of us, with outbreaks of rain and a lot of cloud around. So unsettled across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland as well, and then heavy spells of rain wrapping around this low pressure system. Drier as we go later on in the southwest.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
If I had £36,000 in tax-free cash...
You'd give it to me.
I'd buy a new chair.
I was just saying, you're sinking...
going down again.
Yeah. Up you go.
I know this must get really boring for you at home. The seats are constantly sinking. Anyway,
the last ones were really uncomfortable because they were so high.
And now we've got these.
And now we've got them much more comfortable, but yeah.
They're lovely chairs.
Very nice. They just don't work properly.
Just don't work.
Never mind. Talking about £36,000.
Yes.
This is our Great British Giveaway. Biggest cash prize of the year so far. It could be yours if you're in it. Here's how to try and win it. Good luck indeed.
Yes, yes. Now, still to come, the Lancaster bomber statue is nearly complete. We'll get more. And actually, we should point out that you contributed £30,000. You're a brilliant lot. Anyway, it's getting there, though they do need a bit more money. Getting all the details from Will Hollis in a couple of minutes.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
There's a huge financial and mental strain for parents, but we have this system now where it talks about they bringing a family member to help, but I don't think that's happening a lot of the time. I think people are having to be off work, look after their child, and often, sorry to say, but their school always calls the mum, and then you have this situation where you have nobody to look after your child. People's grandparents don't seem to want to do it so much, and often family members aren't just down the road. So what we have is no village. And I think it's really important when you have a child that you need that village.
Are children getting more sicker than they used to be? Or is it just that we take the odd sniffle a bit more seriously now since 2020?
Yes, I do think the odd sniffle can be. I know in my school they say 3 days away, you know, the slightest little thing, and it's like...
If you have a cold?
Yeah, no, please, go in, yeah. And
3 days off if you have a cold for a child, and we wonder why all these parents aren't at work. I think some of these figures about people who could be working and aren't working, they're not necessarily on benefits, but some of them will be people who, during the pandemic, particularly parents, decided to get a different work-life balance. They quite liked being at home, and they realised the children are benefiting from it. Do you think those people are in these statistics, Annette?
Of people staying at home with not working?
Who decided to not go back to work of working age?
Yes, I think a lot of people don't want to go into an office anymore either. They've had that little bit of freedom and they're like, I'm not going in. And I know employers are trying to get them to go in, but they just want to be at home. They want to be near their children if their children are sick, whether that's the mum or the dad. And also a lot of people don't live near their office or wherever. They don't want to commute. Train fares have gone up, so they say, well, why should I pay? So you have this whole knock-on effect throughout the economy.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It is 29 minutes past 8. Now, an Avro Lancaster bomber in Lincolnshire has reached another remarkable milestone.
The Bomber County Gateway Trust have built a full-size version of the aircraft, which is going to be taller than the Angel of the North.
Well, you generous lot have donated more than £30,000 towards the project so far, and it is then, as a result, closer to completion.
GB News' East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has the story.
The plane that won the war. Once thousands of Lancaster bombers filled the skies above Lincolnshire. Now there is only one left. Dick Denby was a boy during the war.
In the 1940s, towards the end of the war, the sky over Lincoln was always full of aeroplanes.
On an industrial estate near Lincoln, the Bomber County Gateway Trust is building a full-scale Lancaster landmark. The structure honouring the heritage of the aircraft and the men who served as crew will be put in place on the border with Nottinghamshire. Ken Sadler is chairman of the charity.
Today is the first opportunity that we've had to assemble the entire structural frame in one piece so that people get to see the scale and the size of what we've actually achieved. We've got to move on from this now to put ribs on this, to flesh it out, to give it the final shape.
Reaching this stage is a huge milestone for the team building the Lancaster, but it's not finished yet. They need more time and, more importantly, money.
We need to raise another £50,000 to buy the steel for cladding it. That's our next big milestone. As soon as we can get that, we can flesh it out and we can start planning a completion date.
They'll get to know all about Lancasters in Nazi Germany and the rest of the occupied continent.
In the 1940s, thousands of Lancaster bombers were stationed along England's eastern counties, mostly in Lincolnshire, the home of Bomber Command. Now a new generation is learning about Britain and the war.
So it'll all be clad in Corten steel and...
Dave Starling's firm, Timmins Engineering, is building the structure.
The ultimate sacrifice was paid by thousands of people, and this is the least that we could do for them, really.
When complete, the Lancaster, named On Freedom's Wings, will be taller than the Angel of the North. It's already loved by locals.
A project like this is just such a fantastic thing that should be remembered. Can't wait to see it finished and mounted.
Everything flew from here, didn't it?
And we lost so many men.
Yes, we did.
It means they're not forgotten.
I should be hopefully allowed to see it. But you never know, do you?
The charity hopes to finish the project by September next year. A reminder of Britain's darkest days and greatest triumph. Will Hollis, GB News in Lincolnshire.
That will be fabulous when it happens.
It certainly will. But there's a way to go. Let's find out how long with the chair of the Bomber Gateway Trust, Ken Sadler, who's in Lincoln. And we saw in the report. Great to see you, Ken. It's phenomenal what has been done so far. But what does happen now in terms of getting that additional £50,000 and getting that other steel structure done?
Good morning. But first, can I just say how grateful we are to you, both of you, to all of GB News and the viewers. You raised £32,000 for us last time, within a week. When you last visited us, we were doing the tail section, and basically that money bought a wing. So we could buy the materials for the wing, have it made. We've now bought the other wing, and as you can see, we've finished it. But to progress it from here, we need to shape it now into the shape of a Lancaster, using ribs on the structural frame that you see. We've got the materials for that. We're in negotiations for the fabrication of that. And then we need to find £46,000 to £50,000 to buy the steel for the cladding. And again, we're looking for people that can fabricate and fix that as well. Lincolnshire's a small county. It's a big area, but it's a small county and a quiet county. But everything that you see that's been done there, except for the stanchions on the site, has been done by local people. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, I mean, Lincolnshire stood up to the mark, didn't it, during the war? It was where Bomber Command was based, is that right? And that's certainly, right. I mean, people were used to seeing these amazing aeroplanes in the sky. This one, though, is going to be a fixed piece of art, really. It's going to have to stand up to the weather and years of it.
That's right. It'll weigh about almost 100 tonnes. Sitting on top of the podium that's already in place, 30 metres in the air, on a bit of a windy hillside. So we've got to make sure it doesn't fly away, unlike a real Lancaster. So we've put 1,300 tonnes of concrete in the base.
Wow.
And spent an awful lot of time and effort on the designs and calculations. But it will look amazing when it's finished.
I just love the fact that this is it's such a passion project, because passion projects are normally down to just a few individuals. This is clearly, well, not only county-wide, but countrywide as well. And it's just such an important part of our history.
It is, yeah. I mean, we had an open day yesterday to show the structure complete, and we had almost 500 people there, and those are the friends and relatives and the people who have had a little bit to do with it, all in their own way. And country-wise, we've had donations from thousands and thousands of people, emails every day.
Well, and that's something that the internet can do as well, actually, because I'm sure there'll be people living abroad who want to be part of it. How much money have you now got to get in order to complete?
It's a moving target. It's a £2 or £3 million project, and we've raised in total cash about 260,000. But we've done £750,000 worth of work using free labour. So we've paid for all the materials, and we've basically not paid for any labour. If we can keep that going by having somebody come forward and clad it for us, we probably only need about 50 or 60,000. But it's dependent on the continued goodwill of engineering firms.
Yeah, well, let's hope they step up to the plate. I mean, I know a lot have so far, and you must be incredibly grateful to them. But if anyone else can help, let's hope they get in touch. Really good to see you, Ken. Thanks very much indeed. If you want to help, either with a couple of quid, or if you are someone who's got some expertise... I was going to say,
I can think of some millionaires in this country who have a real interest in aviation, and it wouldn't be anything to them, really, would it?
Be a great thing to do.
They need to know more about it, maybe.
Head to the website, bombergatewaytrust.co.uk. Brilliant stuff.
Do stay with us. Still to come, Aidan McGee. We're here with all the sport. That's next.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Time for the sport. Aidan McGee is here at 8:40. Good to see you, Aidan. I'm just... Ice Cold Palmer.
Yes.
How many times did he have to do his celebration yesterday?
Well, he did it 4 times just in the first half. Do you know... Are you familiar with the celebration?
Yes.
He just does it. Yeah, like that. Yeah, exactly.
That's it?
Yeah, because he's
ice cold.
That means...
He's an ice cold finisher. I mean, he's never missed a penalty.
Yeah.
I mean, he's relatively young. There's still time for him to play for England enough times to miss a penalty. Don't worry about that.
Don't say that.
Indeed, but no, 4 goals in the first half, and that was after he'd hit the post and had a goal disallowed. And in the second half, he missed an absolute sitter. He should have made it 5 goals.
So whatever he'd just eaten or drunk, we need more of that.
Yeah, we do. I mean,
I'll have what he's having.
He was absolutely outstanding, I have to say. There were 6 goals in the first half. There were none after the break. I think they just stopped attacking each other, the 2 teams. But it was a good advert for the Premier League, and it just makes you wonder, why wasn't he starting more for England in the summer?
Yeah, you do wonder. I mean, but there are a lot of questions about the lineup.
Captain hindsight and everything. It's easy to look back and think, well, you know, to the England manager especially, he should have done this and should have done that. That's probably the last thing he wants to hear, and he's out of a job now anyway. But nonetheless, he's well known to people who aren't even that interested in football, because he scored in the final for England against Spain, having come off the bench. And yeah, I look at the plethora of stars that England have at their disposal right now, and I'm just wondering now whether he might be the best of the lot, because everything he does. He's great to watch as well. He just has that unerring sort of, I don't know, that kind of, how can you describe it? That dead-eyed accuracy in front of goal.
Laser focus.
Yeah. I need more of that.
Oh, I could write for the
Maybe
papers.
the thing to do is to keep him on the bench for a few minutes and then set him free.
Yeah, possibly.
He's like a tiger coming out of the cage.
I thought the fact that Southgate did introduce him many times in the tournament suggests that is exactly what he was thinking. And maybe he just thought he was young.
What are you laughing at?
I was thinking to whip it out of the trap.
Yes, that's right. Whip it out the trap.
Show the dog the rabbit.
Yeah.
Off you go.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what made me feel old afterwards. He was asked, he said, Theo Walcott was in the studio Match Today, and he said he compared Cole Palmer to Dennis Bergkamp, his old Dutch teammate at Arsenal, who a hugely celebrated player around the world. He said, I've never watched him play, I'm a bit young. Dennis Bergkamp only finished playing in 2006.
Love me there.
Just on Arsenal quickly as well, Mikel Arteta's trying to mend his relationship with Pep Guardiola. I'll read the quote to you, actually, because there's been... I think the media and some players on both sides have been trying to drive a wedge between the two, because we know that a rivalry is in everyone's best interest because it creates a better narrative week to week. And Arteta said, I've admired Pep since I was 10 years old. I respect him profoundly. I'm so grateful for everything he did for me and continues to do for me. If someone wants to damage our relationship, That's not in my hands. And this goes back to the fact that he worked under Pep and learned a lot of his trade in 3.5 years at Manchester City. Arsenal won 4-2 yesterday. City dropped points. Liverpool, though, went top of the league with a win over Wolverhampton Wanderers. No one's talking about them. We're focused on Chelsea, Arsenal, or Chelsea coming late to the party, Arsenal and Man City. But Liverpool is sitting on top of the tree. An impressive win for them at Wolves yesterday. And we've got Man United v Tottenham today, 4:30. Erik ten Hag under pressure. Tottenham need a win there as well, and that looks to be a decent one to play.
Are you
out.
going to the game?
I'm not. I've got a 7-course.
Oh, that's right. You've got your taste menu thing.
Hot date.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Yeah. But it's outdoors. That's what I'm worried about.
Well, I've looked at my weather app.
Yeah, you're not very positive.
It's going to be dry but very windy.
Oh, good. Well, I hope the food's not dry.
I'm sure it won't be. It'll be
very
lovely.
nice, I'm sure. Right, Adrian, thank you. Have a lovely afternoon. We've got the papers with Lynn and Tom in a couple of minutes.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained. I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Janis Joplin shot to fame in 1967, but after releasing 3 albums, she was dead 3 years later at the age of 27, having overdosed on heroin.
Yes, very, very brief life, but towering influence. People like Pink in the modern day have said that she is the influence. But she was around so briefly, I guess, burned very brightly and a very troubled soul. And what we've got is A Night with Janis Joplin, the musical. And I think a lot of the problems, it's been getting very mixed reviews, and I think the problem is with this subtitle, the musical. That does it no justice at all.
Really?
It's staggering, stunning in an audience. So what we have is A Night with. It's as if she's in concert. She's sitting on the stage, she's swinging from a bottle, and she's singing and giving us little memories, thoughts on life.
I think I see where you're going, because some critics have said it's a fantastic individual performance that sits in an empty vessel of a show.
Yeah.
And you're saying that that's because the expectations of what the show is have been wrong.
Yes, I agree. And I do think that it's obviously a very loving show. There's very little reference to drugs. There's a bit of a throwaway comment. So we don't really look at the demons. What we do is we explore womanhood very powerfully, but also the blues.
How long do we have to see this?
This one it's on until September the 28th. It's on at the Peacock, which is just down by Aldwych in London.
Quite a small auditorium, actually.
No, it's a big auditorium. So the Peacock is it's a bit of a barn of a room. And again, I would say this show might be better in a slightly smaller venue, but I cannot recommend the performances highly enough.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, time for the papers this morning with editor of Spike, Tom Slater, and political commentator Lynn May. Morning, you two. Should we have a look at Mariella Frostrop?
Who's done a big interview, I think, in Telegraph?
Yes, Sunday Telegraph.
But in it, she's talking about retirement and that she'll never retire. Good on her.
No, what's wrong with her?
Well, because she's saying, isn't she, that she doesn't want to retire. She'll never retire because people who retire die.
Oh.
And she wants to do lots more things. And that gets me all rattled because surely retiring means you can do some of the things that you haven't had the time to do when you're working.
No, absolutely. And I get that some people
just want to carry on working, they can carry on working and all the rest of it. But there's plenty of people who get past 65 or close towards 70, as many people will probably be retiring in the future, and just think, you know what, I do want to have some time for myself. Also, I feel like these discussions around like the retirement age and stuff is often very much skewed towards people who are... People imagine that everyone works in white-collar work as well. The thing about retirement and having a state pension was because of the fact that people's bodies, by the end of their working life, just couldn't sustain that amount of work anymore. So it's all about where you are in life. What job you do tends to colour your relationship.
I can't imagine Mariella Frostrop working is particularly strenuous. I mean, look, let's be honest. I mean, I know we moan about getting up at the crack of dawn, but it's not like working in a factory.
No.
I think it depends what you do as well. If you have a passion for your job and you absolutely love it, and then you feel like retirement is just going to stop all of that, working gives so many people purpose. Like, there's so many studies that have been released recently that working actually keeps the mind active, agile, and which reflects in your physical ability oftentimes. So I understand why people are like, well, why would I ever, like, stop working if I enjoy my work? It keeps me active.
You want to go and live life a little bit.
But that might be their living of life. Like, work may take them travelling, may take them meeting different people, whereas if they just stop it and they're just sitting at home looking at their four walls, that's pretty boring.
But Mariella Frostrop in this, and it's almost as though you're agreeing with her, when people retire, they do just sit in an armchair and do nothing.
I think some people do, because I've worked in organisations where the more maturer people, they've been advised, maybe think about retiring, we'll give you a certain compensation, money, whatever, you can retire early. And they're like, well, what would I do? I don't want to. Like, I don't want to... Which is another conversation. Why have you geared your whole life around just work? But some people have.
Some people have no choice. But it's that whole thing. I think you nail it when you say, you know, if you're a builder or, you know, or whatever... you know, you are not going to keep working until you're 85 because you love it so much.
You wouldn't be able to even if you wanted to.
Well, no.
Thing, but,
so I love my job. I've always loved my job.
But you still look forward to retirement. He's always telling me he wants to.
Counting the days.
I'm retiring at 60. I'm getting out. I've geared my entire working life. I've geared all my... I mean, I'm a northerner, so I save and don't spend money. But it's all been geared towards 60. I want to get... And then I want to go and do those things that I've waited all this time to do.
Such as?
I don't know, holidays and long breaks and not ever having to set an alarm clock and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh, I think that would be blissful.
Just pottering.
Waking up when you want.
Yes, waking up when you want. And also not having to keep a diary and worry about, oh, I've got to do that before Saturday because blah, blah, blah. I think that the idea of freedom would be very nice.
A bit more relaxation.
Yeah. So you're not planning your retirement, Lynn?
I just think... I had an operation, which meant I couldn't really walk for a while, but I was also advised to take 2 months off, and I was literally at home bored.
Yeah, but you're young. You're young. It makes a difference.
Both my parents were hugely active. The only thing that stopped my dad is because of a back operation, but he was a bodybuilder, still training. My mum still goes to the gym.
Well, what an interesting family you've got.
So I can't imagine me... maybe I might change. I don't like... What I agree with is I don't want to feel, like, obligated, like I have to.
Yeah.
I want to be able to say, I don't fancy working for 2 months, and now I do. So maybe that will come into play. But I can't imagine just, like... I can imagine it being a novelty for a lot of people for 2 years. This is brilliant. And then it's like, a bit bored of this now. I would rather go back to a bit of structure, waking up early.
Well, then you find a project, don't you? But at least it's your
That's kind of work, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but
have you planned your retirement, Tom?
I haven't yet.
No.
I've given it enough thought, but...
No, well, you don't need to quite yet.
You do change your mind. Years ago, I used to say I'd never retire because, you know, I just wanted to be on television.
Until you're 90.
You do change when you're older.
Yeah. Yes, you do. Well, you have other...
priorities.
That's the idea, And I think getting married would as well change.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Priority, because you're thinking of things you want to do together, travel and things like that. Fair enough. So, Mariella, you're not necessarily right.
Right.
Not necessarily wrong either.
Marjorie, as we wait to retire, do we all have to eat insects, Tom?
According to the UK government's climate envoy, yes, this is Professor Rachel Kite, who has apparently been one of... many kind of environmentalist experts who claim that the future is in everyone eating insects. This seems to be a particular preoccupation of theirs. The argument seems to be that as people around the world, there's a kind of growing global middle class, that tends to increase the demand for meat and so on, better diets and all the rest of it, and that we just can't possibly sustain it, so we've got to eat bugs. I don't think that's been a particularly appetising option for many people.
But is it just because in this country we don't like the idea? I mean, you go over to China or whatever, and they walk round with insects on sticks and being cooked.
And a lot of this stuff is, because we were talking about this earlier.
It's how we look, the cultures, how different cultures look at food. We think one thing may be disgusting, but then someone might come here and think, oh, black pudding, hate the sound of that.
Yes.
You know,
it is
I
relative.
think it's what you're
to a certain extent, but at the same time, there's also the fact that it should be about what people want to eat rather than like, you must have this now.
Yeah, it feels like they are trying to push it on us, bug burgers and stuff.
Yeah.
What worries me slightly is she was very impressed because her friend made cricket flour pasta.
No, thank you.
Doesn't sound good, does it?
No, I don't want my pasta to be made of cricket.
I'd rather give up pasta.
Yeah.
If there was a wheat problem and you could no longer have wheat pasta, I'd give up pasta. I'm not going to eat.
I don't think we're going to be
crickets.
sold on this.
No. But then we do eat red food colouring.
Yeah.
You know, is made from insects, and we all eat plenty of... Well, I don't, but
I don't.
do
You
eat.
see, that's the point. You can make the choice not to. And there are lots of vegetables to eat, thank you very much, that are really nice. And you can grind them up and pretend they're meat.
Yep.
But not crickets.
Let's not go down.
No, very unattractive.
Yes. Oh, well, there you go. On that delightful thing. Have a lovely breakfast, and we'll see you both very soon. Thanks very much.
Here's your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be wet and windy in the west today with outbreaks of heavy rain and strong winds, but generally drier in the east with some hazy sunshine. But it's a chilly start to the day, especially where we've seen some clear skies but bright skies to start, especially across Scotland and across eastern parts of England. But further towards the west, we have an area of low pressure that's bringing in some strong gusty winds, and the Met Office have got a yellow wind warning in force for Wales and the southwest of England, so expect gusts of 50 to 60 miles per hour. Mild here though, but probably unpleasant, feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine further east you go. So through Sunday evening then, we've got heavy spells of rain and a rain warning that will also come into force later. So heavy spells of rain, especially over the highest ground of Devon, Cornwall and also Wales. Turning cloudier across Northern Ireland with further spells of rain here, but generally dry across parts of Scotland with some clear skies to go into Sunday evening. But for many of us, it's going to be turning increasingly unsettled with outbreaks of rain continuing to push their way north and eastwards, coming into much of Wales, into the Midlands and then in towards the southeast of England. So like I said, we do have a Met Office rain warning in force, so expect further flooding and some difficult driving conditions as well. But that will lead to a mild night with many places seeing largely cloudy skies. And we also still hold on to some strong winds, especially towards the south and west as we start Monday morning. But Monday looks generally unsettled for a lot of us with outbreaks of rain and a lot of cloud around. So unsettled across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland as well, and then heavy spells of rain wrapping around this low pressure system, drier as we go later on in the southwest.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're joined by Lewis Oakley and Esther Stanhope. And Lewis, let's start with free gear Keir, shall we? It's been the story of the week, and apparently it's led to, well, calamity in the polls.
Yeah, so he has dropped by 26 points in the opinion polls. And, I mean, it's just been sort of going down from day one. He didn't even start that high. But, yeah, this is just bad optics. As we say, like, he hasn't done anything illegal or wrong, everything was declared, but at the same time you're telling people they don't get their winter fuel allowance and you're there walking off with your swag bag. It's just not a good look. And even, you know, I was thinking as well, the optics of them trying to clamp down on MPs having second jobs. You know, any of those could turn around and say, well, actually, we have to pay for our own clothes. I just think it's just bad optics that he's had. And, you know, we've got those comparisons of Sunak in the stands, he's just sat amongst the people. And
Prince William goes to Villa games, albeit in the director's box, but it's not an 8k per game seat. And by the way, can I just mention, this isn't just an isolated Labour incident. Since the start of their tenure, they were accused of filling the civil service with previous Labour donors, previous Labour aides, people who worked for Labour Together think tank. The civil service is meant to be politically neutral, and they bypassed a lot of procedures to get people into their positions, not least the Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who parachuted Ian Caulfield, his name was, who donated £5,000 personally to her, and then he ended up in the Treasury with a 175k a year job. Yes, he did resign after it was revealed in the Times, but it does make you wonder, you know, you've spent years having a go at the Tories for this, and you do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, it's full of hypocrisy, and also the whole Sue Gray thing, and they were slagging off the Conservatives for not towing the line, and now they're being hypocrites because now they're taking freebies.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning. Internal feud set to dominate the Conservative Party conference, which kicks off today.
Rishi Sunak, who is, of course, at the moment the leader, is going to speak today, but then he's going to leave early to avoid the limelight of the leadership contest.
Well, that's as Kemi Badenoch, Robert Jenrick, James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat will use the next days to try to win over members.
Meanwhile, ashamed of her party, Rosie Duffield quits Labour with a stinging rebuke of Keir Starmer, accusing the Prime Minister of hypocrisy.
Israel braces for revenge following the killing of the Hezbollah leader yesterday. Benjamin Netanyahu calls it a historic turning point.
The secrets of the Queen's final days are revealed by Boris Johnson in his new memoir, including some crucial advice she had for him.
It's going to be an unsettled day in the west with outbreaks of heavy rain and stronger winds, but drier in the east. I'll have all of the latest coming up shortly.
It's just gone 9 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
So it is Conservative Party conference. The question is it going to be any use or just a disaster? I mean, the Prime Minister's giving a speech today,
and then,
the former Prime Minister,
and then whipping off.
And then just going. And what sort of speech will that be?
I don't know. And how will it be received? Because, if you like, you know, he's speaking from a position of utter failure, actually.
Yeah, it's
and a lot of people are sort of blaming him for enabling a Labour government that a lot of people, well, particularly in that conference room, didn't want.
So then we're down to 4 candidates to take over from Rishi Sunak. And this is all about pitching, because they've got to get down to the last 2. MPs decide all of that. Then, of course, it goes to the party membership. So they've got to appeal to the party. Is this really the place to do it? And what are they going to say? What is the sort of clear blue water, if you like, between each candidate? Well, our deputy political editor, Tom Harwood, is in for the Camilla Tominey show today at 9:30. Morning to you, Tom. I know you've got one heck of a lineup today.
God, it's a big one. It's enormous shoes to fill this weekend. But my goodness me, we've got all 4 Conservative leadership candidates here at this stand over the course of the show. 1.5 hours of pretty punchy political interrogation. We've got Robert Jenrick, Kemi Badenoch, James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat all here at this stand, and we'll be questioning them about their platforms. I have to say, their faces are emblazoned on huge banners throughout the hall here in Birmingham. We'll be asking how they want to rebuild the Conservative Party and if that's even possible. But also on the programme, we've got Labour's Pat McFadden. Now, many people are calling him the real Deputy Prime Minister after it was revealed that Angela Rayner is excluded from certain meetings that Pat McFadden has been invited to. We'll be questioning him about where the power really lies in Downing Street. And Zia Youssef, the chairman of the Reform Party, will be here as well. This in a week when Reform has sacked a long-term spin doctor for Nigel Farage. I'll be asking him who's behind that change. It's going to be an enormous show, so do tune in from 9:30.
Yes, I know. Enormous show. I mean, having Pat McFadden there as well with what's going on in the Labour Party. Today's story isn't just about the Conservatives, is it?
Certainly not. And of course, we're all fresh-faced from the Labour Party conference, which wrapped up on Wednesday. It did feel very, very strange, I have to say, in Liverpool. It didn't feel like a party that had just won an enormous Blair-style election victory. It felt like a party that had been in power for years and years and years, dogged by scandal and pretty drenched, not helped by the torrential rain that we had throughout the weekend and early week in Liverpool. It made for rather sodden delegates.
Yeah, it's a remarkable situation, Tom, that I mean, certainly you would expect with a brand new government, with an absolutely massive majority, that should have been one big party. And it's turned out to be, as you say, a bit of a damp squib where it would seem Keir Starmer's ratings, personal ratings, have fallen even during the conference.
It is extraordinary. There was a poll put out by the More in Common group. They do regular tracking of leader favourability. Keir Starmer is down to -37. That's just 1 point above the -38 Rishi Sunak was at when he called the election. It's the most extraordinary fall from grace. Keir Starmer, of course, had positive numbers the first month he was in office, but you look at that chart and you just see this precipitous fall. It must be the shortest honeymoon of any newly elected Prime Minister after a general election in British history.
Just thinking of today's timetable, we know that Rishi Sunak is going to speak, and that's going to be very interesting to see, A, what he says, what can he possibly say, except to maybe wish the contenders good luck, and B, how he is going to himself be received. But also, I mean, the four contenders, are they each going to speak? Are they going to do it today, or are they going to do it over the next 4 days? How is it going to work?
Well, I think there's one thing that the former Prime Minister, now leader of the opposition, could say, which is sorry. I think a lot of people will be infuriated that the election was called when it was. The only party it seemed to surprise was the party that the guy who called it was leading. I mean, we have to emphasise the fall that the Conservatives had at the last election, down to just 121 members of Parliament. The Conservative Party has never had this few MPs. Although it is strange, it is very, very odd. Talking to people here, you get this sense that they think they could be back in government by the end of this Parliament in 5 years' time. They believe that because the Labour Party is mired in scandal and has had this very short honeymoon and has managed to irritate the unions, has managed to fob off the pensioner vote, but also has managed to not manage communications within Number 10 with any sense of professionalism. The Conservative Party believe that this could be a one-term Labour government. But of course, if it is to be, they need to pick a leader who can lead, who can actually make the Conservative Party a campaigning force once more. So all four Conservative candidates will be speaking at the start of next week. That is a 20-minute speech afforded to all of them in quick succession, where party members will be sitting in the main hall here in Birmingham, listening to what they have to say and hugely influencing the next few rounds of this vote. Of course, when it gets down from 4 to 2, then members get to vote.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting then, Tom, isn't it? I mean, if they've got that mindset of Labour being a one-term government, it's what direction do you take the Conservative Party to make them electable again? Do you try to win votes over from those who voted Labour in the last election, or are you just desperately trying to claw back votes from Reform?
Well, there are 4 big buckets that the Conservative Party leadership candidates need to look at. Number 1, of course, are the direct switches from Conservative to Labour. Number 2, perhaps, the switches from Conservative to the Reform Party. Number 3, those who voted for the Liberal Democrats, who, let's not forget, won 72 seats at the last election. That's around 60 seats taken from the Conservative Party. But number 4 is something that perhaps isn't spoken enough about. and that's everyone who stayed at home. The people that would have ordinarily voted Conservative, but for one reason or another, sat on their hands and did not vote. Let's not forget, turnout was down at this election. The Labour Party won not just on a smaller share of the vote than any party that has won a decent-style majority in British history, but also on fewer votes comparative to even Jeremy Corbyn in 2017. So it was a lower turnout election, and that is a very, very interesting phenomenon. A fracturing of the vote, but also fewer people voting. How can this party re-energise, get people back up off the sofa and out into the polling stations? It's a tough task to achieve in just one parliamentary term.
OK, Tom, really good to see you. We look forward to seeing you more at 9:30 this morning. Thank you very much indeed, and to hear what all those four candidates are going to say. I don't know.
They have to believe, don't they? They have to believe that this is only a one-term parliament, because otherwise it's just too depressing for them otherwise, isn't it?
But isn't it interesting that all this, where you would normally be, it's Nigel Farage has put a spanner in the works, because they just don't seem to know at the moment if they need to pitch for Reform voters or pitch for everybody else. So do you go centre ground, which is what normally wins elections, or do you pitch to all those people and a lot of millions who voted for Reform this time round, or would they naturally come back anyway? Depends whether Reform withers during the course of this Parliament or grows.
Yes.
Which way is it going to go?
Yes, you're right. If the Tories pitch that, because they were criticised so much for not being right-wing enough by so many of their Tory faithful, if they pitch themselves more to the right, then they're directly vying with Reform. But what else can they do?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
there has to be a pact, doesn't there?
There needs someone in that case who is charismatic enough to take on Farage. That's a big ask.
Are any of the four? I don't know. Well, we'll find out over the coming days, won't we?
It's going to be interesting.
It'll be fascinating, yeah, and difficult. Right, let's move on at 11 minutes past 9. An Avro Lancaster bomber in Lincolnshire has reached another remarkable milestone.
Yeah, but the Bomber County Gateway Trust have now completed, well, the frame, if you like, of this full-size version of the aircraft, which, once it's complete, will be taller than the Angel of the North.
With GB News viewers, thank you so much, donating more than £30,000 towards the project, it is now even closer to completion.
Well, our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has the latest.
The plane that won the war. Once thousands of Lancaster bombers filled the skies above Lincolnshire. Now there is only one left. Dick Denby was a boy during the war.
In the 1940s, towards the end of the war, the sky over Lincoln was always full of aeroplanes.
On an industrial estate near Lincoln, the Bomber County Gateway Trust is building a full-scale Lancaster landmark. The structure honouring the heritage of the aircraft and the men who served as crew will be put in place on the border with Nottinghamshire. Ken Sadler is chairman of the charity.
Today is the first opportunity that we've had to assemble the entire structural frame in one piece so that people get to see the scale and the size of what we've actually achieved. We've got to move on from this now to put ribs on this, to flesh it out, to give it the final shape.
Reaching this stage is a huge milestone for the team building the Lancaster, but it's not finished yet. They need more time and, more importantly, money.
We need to raise another £50,000 to buy the steel for cladding it. That's our next big milestone. As soon as we can get that, we can flesh it out and we can start planning a completion date.
They'll get to know all about Lancasters in Nazi Germany and the rest of the occupied continent.
In the 1940s, thousands of Lancaster bombers were stationed along England's eastern counties, mostly in Lincolnshire, the home of Bomber Command. Now a new generation is learning about Britain and the war.
So it'll all be clad in Corten steel and...
Dave Starling's firm, Timmins Engineering, is building the structure.
The ultimate sacrifice was paid by thousands of people, and this is the least that we could do for them, really.
When complete, the Lancaster, named On Freedom's Wings, will be taller than the Angel of the North. It's already loved by locals.
A project like this is just such a fantastic thing that should be remembered. Can't wait to see it finished and mounted.
Everything flew from here, didn't it?
And we lost so many people, so many men.
War. Yes, we did.
It means they're not forgotten.
I should be hopefully allowed to see it. But you never know, do you?
The charity hopes to finish the project by September next year. A reminder of Britain's darkest days and greatest triumph. Will Hollis, GB News in Lincolnshire.
At 14 minutes past 9, let's have a look at some of the other stories this morning.
Well, the clean-up is beginning after Hurricane Helene swept through the southeast. Did I say swept? Swept. I said that last time, didn't I?
Yeah.
Swept through the southeast of the United States, leaving at least 64 people dead and millions without power. Helene was one of the most powerful storms ever to hit the United States.
Well, meanwhile, wild weather has devastated parts of Nepal. More than 100 killed, 64 missing. Flooding and landslides hitting Kathmandu. It's the highest recorded rainfall there since 1970.
SpaceX has launched its mission to bring back 2 astronauts who have been stranded on the International Space Station since June. The Dragon capsule, which has 2 empty seats for Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, lifted off from Cape Canaveral last night. They hope to bring back the stranded pair, but not until February next year.
I've still never seen a launch live.
Oh, yes, you have to go and see one.
I'd love to do that.
But you
I'd
have
love to take my dad to see a launch.
You have to go with, I mean, obviously you time it with the timed launch, but the launch can be put off sometimes for days on end.
Yeah.
So you have to be prepared to go out there for about 2 weeks. And
See, that's what we did. We did for the shuttle. We went out for the launch, and it all just got put
Did you
back,
miss
and
it?
so
Yeah.
we didn't see it.
You've got to time your holiday out there for the beginning, for the launch window sort of thing, and then be prepared for it to be put off days and days and
So
days.
you need to. This is why you need to retire.
Yeah,
so
but
you've
exactly.
So you've then said, well, we'll stay an extra week.
There are some lovely places around Cape Canaveral, though, because you're not allowed to go too near the launch pad. You have to be 3 miles away.
See, it's long. Hello.
Oh, yeah.
It is a long way back. You have to be, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's deadly within that zone.
Yeah, 3 miles you have to be from the launch area, but that's all beach area, so you can go and sit on the beach and watch it as it goes up. And, it's just wonderful. And you still 3 miles away, your rib cage vibrates to it. It's really, it's shuddering almost. Yeah, so exciting. We'll have to go.
One day.
Yeah.
One day.
Yeah.
Right. What we're talking about, money.
Yes.
How do you fancy getting your grubby little hands on £36,000 in lovely tax-free lolly?
You could go and stay at a luxury hotel near Cape Canaveral and wait for a launch, couldn't you? That money could be yours if you take part. Here's the details you need.
Betting on demand. Good luck.
Still to come, we'll be talking to the Conservative MP for East Wiltshire, Danny Krueger. That's next.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
More than half of people aged 50 and over feel happier from having a friendship, and 46% feel a sense of belonging too. Tomorrow is the start of Friendship Month. The Oddfellows, a non-profit friendly society that provides older adults with opportunities to create new friendships, is now inviting more people this September to join their local groups and expand their friendship circles through giving a taster activity at local community centres. We're joined now by Jane Nelson, who's the CEO of Oddfellows. Good morning, Jane. Thanks for joining us. As someone in my mid-30s, I've even noticed as well that my own friendship group has diminished over the years as kind of, you know, people get married and have kids and they kind of drift apart and don't make time for each other.
How important is it to have friends separate to your family? What benefit does that bring you?
As you do get older, you do lose friends for a variety of reasons. Either you lose touch or they have an illness or they pass away as you get older. The stats show that people love spending time with their friends. It always takes somebody, doesn't it? Somebody's got to make that first step to send a text to say, do you fancy meeting up for coffee or do you fancy going to the pub or whatever the arrangement's going to be. But sometimes somebody always has to make that first step and text or phone. And I think the other key thing is it usually tends to be the same person, but that doesn't matter as long as that connectivity is made, because that's what you need. You need the connectivity. If you think about when we were children, we'd go around the playground and say, will you be my friend? Well, we don't tend to do that as we get older. But be brave, look on Oddfellows website, see all the amazing events we've got on, go to see what's going on in your area, oddfellows.co.uk, or you can telephone 0800 028 1810, and our team will be more than happy to point them in the right direction of their local events, and there's so much going on, 300 going on.
GB News, the People's Channel.
(9:21) now it is, we've been saying, start of the Conservative Party conference, which this year is all about who's going to be the leader of those 4 remaining candidates.
Yes.
Win over the MPs, haven't they, first?
That's right, and I think that will be a tough gig because everybody will be a bit low after the ignominious fall from grace. Let's talk to one of those MPs, Danny Krueger, who joins us live now from conference. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Yes, good. You can hear us. That's lovely. How do you think the conference is going to go today? How do you think Rishi Sunak, first of all, is going to address the party faithful?
Well, listen, it's Rishi's day. I think the party will be respectful of the work that he has done as leader through difficult times. But then he's leaving, and in a sense, I think that's probably right, because we need to look to the future. And the next couple of days are going to be when all the candidates for leader will be showing their stuff. I'm sure Rishi will get a respectful hearing today, but everybody's looking at the candidates now.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, the big question with the candidates is not just who they are as people, who they could be as a leader, but what direction they'll take the party in. And there seems to be a lot of division over that.
Well, it's a helpful debate that we're having. It's quite a long leadership contest. We're all pretty exhausted, I can tell you, and we've got another month to go. But it has been a helpful conversation. Yes, you've got 4 different candidates. They're all explaining a slightly different idea of what the problem is and what the future is. I'm backing Robert Jenrick because I think he stands for the reforms that our party needs and our country needs. He's the one with the proper understanding, I think, of our defeat. We failed the public. We lost trust because we didn't deliver on the things that we promised we would. And we can make excuses for that, legitimate ones, but fundamentally we didn't fix the problems with migration, with the economy, with the NHS. I think Rob is setting out a very coherent and bold agenda for change. And I'm hopeful that this week, colleagues in Parliament, the MPs, but more importantly the members, and indeed the public, will be able to see in Rob the leader for the future of the party, who can take the fight to Labour, win back our lost voters from reform, and win the next election.
How can you win back those lost people who've gone to reform when surely the direction in which to take the Conservative Party is to the right, not to the middle ground, but to the right, which is reform's area, isn't it? How are you going to deal with that problem?
Well, Anne, I think we've actually got 2 challenges. We've got to hold our centre. I mean, if you think of left and right, and it's a bit simplistic, but let's use that language. We need to hold the centre, we need to be in the centre ground of British politics, where the public are. A lot of people left us not to reform, but to the Liberal Democrats or to stay at home. We can't ignore those people. But I agree with you. I think the fundamental challenge we've got is to win back millions of people who decided that they'd had enough of the Conservative Party because we weren't being properly Conservative. We'd promised a whole bunch of stuff, particularly around migration and control of our borders. I think to win those voters back, we have to be credible and coherent, not just a kind of sensationalist party of protest, actually have a real plan, which I hope will convince those more centrist voters as well that we speak for them. But the way we'll win people back is by being a proper Conservative Party that can deliver.
OK, well, we've got to leave it there. Danny Krueger, appreciate your time. Thank you. That's it from us.
Yeah, do stay tuned, though, because there's a lot going on this morning.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be wet and windy in the west today with outbreaks of heavy rain and strong winds, but generally drier in the east with some hazy sunshine. But it's a chilly start to the day, especially where we've seen some clear skies, but bright skies to start, especially across Scotland and across eastern parts of England. But further towards the west, we have an area of low pressure that's bringing in some strong gusty winds, and the Met Office have got a yellow wind warning in force for Wales and the southwest of England. So expect gusts of 50 to 60 miles per hour. Mild here though, but probably unpleasant, feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine further east you go. So through Sunday evening then, we've got heavy spells of rain and a rain warning that will also come into force later. So heavy spells of rain, especially over the highest ground of Devon, Cornwall and also Wales. Turning cloudier across Northern Ireland with further spells of rain here, but generally dry across parts of Scotland with some clear skies to go into Sunday evening. But for many of us, it's going to be turning increasingly unsettled with outbreaks of rain continuing to push their way north and eastwards, coming into much of Wales, into the Midlands and then in towards the southeast of England. So like I said, we do have a Met Office rain warning in force, so expect further flooding and some difficult driving conditions as well. But that will lead to a mild night with many places seeing largely cloudy skies. And we also still hold on to some strong winds, especially towards the south and west as we start Monday morning. But Monday looks generally unsettled for a lot of us with outbreaks of rain and a lot of cloud around. So unsettled across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland as well, and then heavy spells of rain wrapping around this low pressure system, drier as we go later on in the southwest.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This week, Free Speech Brighton, a sister group of the Free Speech Union, claimed that they were kicked out of a pub in the city for discussing trans issues in schools. The group booked a room in a pub for an evening of speeches and discussion when they claimed security guards came and asked them to leave after one speaker began to talk about this topic. Now, a clip of the evening was, in fact, posted to social media. Can you give us some background to what happened, what the event was for, and why you booked it?
Our normal pub was being refurbished, so about 3 weeks ago I went in and booked a local pub for a meeting, and they didn't ask any questions about what sort of meeting. It was in a back room. It was mainly secluded from the rest of the pub, so I thought it would be fine. But anyway, they didn't ask any questions. They took my booking. We arrived, I set up. The first speaker started speaking, who's a retired teacher who is concerned about trans in schools and how that affects children. But she was talking purely about children. She was not talking about adults who have protected characteristics, obviously. And then towards the end of her speech, I became aware of security guards standing behind me in the middle room. So I went to have a quick word with them.